is essentially to win by force, to control all of the land between the sea and the River Jordan, and to give Palestinians a choice. Either they can stay and accept that they will not be full citizens of the State of Israel, or they can continue to fight, in which case they will be destroyed, to quote members of the far right, or they can leave. They can actually leave the territory altogether. Is actually that a vision which Israel is moving towards?
I certainly hope not. I think that even the majority within the Likud party of Netanyahu do not believe in that. I think that though we are, as being a liberal, as believe in democracy, I believe that the vast majority, more than 80% of Israelis, believe in liberalism, so see it as a real threat that we have to deal with.
Tamir Pardo, we've run out of time. I thank you very much indeed for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Mercy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app or on YouTube. Friday, we made it, and what a lovely week it's been so far. Sunshine expected today again, and a high of 15 degrees. The show's on till 8:37 AM. Let's say good morning to the team. Mr. Corey Funk, multi-talented, doing it all. Thank you, Corey, for filling in yesterday, hosting from Lac du Bonnie. What a wonderful community welcoming InfoRad on site. And big thanks to Chloe Friesen, who was out there as well for that very special show for Communities in Focus. So Corey, of course, back on the air with us today, covering the commute and directing the show. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi, who saved the day yesterday in the early hours with some technical issues, as always. Abby is our technical producer here on InfoRad, and will be on the air covering weather. And good morning, Mr. Kevin Ipatebo, making us look good on YouTube. Nice to see you this morning, Kev. All right, let's go to our news center. It's 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. Heather is here with our headlines. Heather Wells from our news department. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the latest violent incident on Winnipeg Transit is stoking fears among some regular bus riders. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Police say they were stabbed and robbed by 3 young women. We're going to hear from a regular transit user who says he hasn't seen any improvement since 21 transit safety officers were hired earlier this year. And Manitoba's opposition PCs say lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer is great news, but they say more needs to be done. The province plans to lower the minimum age for self-referral screenings to 40 by the end of 2026. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, coming up in the program today, we have our regular monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew. He's going to be joining us. Today, we'll ask him a little bit more about Lac du Bonnie and whether or not shovels will get in the ground on their care home that has been promised for many, many years. And of course, since we were in community yesterday, we'll find out more about that. Also, still some outstanding answers about Fort Garry MLA Mark Wasiliu, who now sits as an independent, and some of the things that he has said as he's throwing some allegations about what the Premier has said. So we'll get that record straight if we can with Premier Wab Kinew a little bit later. Also in the program, in the first hour of the show, some truck driving schools say they're offering mandatory level training and they're cutting corners. Critics say it's leading to dangerous highways. Stay tuned.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
A rare conversation with one of the greatest actors of our time, Cate Blanchett. She'll talk about how, after years of putting on accents for the likes of Queen Elizabeth and Katharine Hepburn and Bob Dylan, her dreams are now all about remembering her real voice.
But I don't know what my voice is anymore.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel-Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin in Oslo.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo.
Founded in 1956, Nihon Hidankyo is focused on nuclear disarmament. Jørgen Bøtne Friednes is head of the Norwegian Nobel Committee.
This grassroots movement of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, is receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons, and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again.
This year's prize is being awarded against a backdrop of ongoing wars being waged in Ukraine, Sudan, and the Middle East. A Canadian pharmacare bill has passed the Senate, receiving royal assent, and is officially law. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says this is great news for many Canadians.
Free insulin is coming for every Canadian who needs it, ensuring that they don't have to choose between putting food on the table and getting the life-saving medication they require. And it means we'll be providing prescription contraceptives for free, because we not only believe in a woman's right to choose, but we act on it.
The bill allows provinces and territories to cover diabetes and birth control medications. It was a key part of the deal the Liberals made with the NDP to stay in power, but that deal is now defunct. So the question going forward, is the NDP prepared to push for an election now that this pharmacare bill has passed? We'll hear more from the government this hour. Former Public Safety Minister Bill Blair is next up to be grilled by the Foreign Interference Commission. He's expected to face more questions about delays in issuing a surveillance warrant. It targeted a prominent Ontario Liberal who CSIS believed was working with the Chinese government. But it took weeks before Blair signed it. The CBC's Evan Dyer has more.
I knew what was at stake in terms of our national security.
Marco Mendicino was Public Safety Minister until July of 2023, and he says in that time he was often asked to sign off on warrants, like the one that appears to have targeted former Ontario Cabinet Minister Michael Chan for surveillance.
I took this part of my assignment extremely seriously. I knew that lives can and do hang in the balance.
Bill Blair, who preceded Mendicino as minister, has already testified that he signed the warrant as soon as he became aware of it. But CSIS and public servants have said that 54 days went by between when CSIS presented it and when Blair finally saw it. Blair's former Chief of Staff, Zita Astravas, has been blamed for that delay, and on Wednesday she faced a fierce grilling by lawyers.
You didn't want it to go ahead, and if it had to go ahead, you wanted to slow walk it. What do you say to that?
I can tell you that your assumptions are categorically false.
Madam, the warrant concerned high-ranking members of your party and also people you had known for years, and that's why you didn't want to see it go ahead.
Again, that is false.
Mendicino didn't help Astravas' case when asked how long it took to turn around warrants when he was minister.
We prioritized CSIS warrants during my tenure. When they came up, they were put on my desk without any undue delay.
The alleged slow rolling of the warrant didn't derail it. Blair signed it and the investigation went ahead. Michael Chan, the presumed target of the warrant, has denied any wrongdoing and says he's been treated unfairly. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
A woman accused of carrying out a curious string of murders across southern Ontario is scheduled to appear in court this morning. Sabrina Kaldar is charged in connection with 3 separate killings last week, including 2 believed to be at random. The CBC's Thomas Daigle has been digging into her past and brings us this report.
It's hard to find acquaintances who will speak openly about Sabrina Kaldar, now that she's facing 3 murder charges in what police consider a 3-day rampage. Her former neighbor was stunned to hear the news.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually. That's insane to hear.
The daughter of 2 dentists, Kaldar's behavior grew violent as an adult. Court records obtained by CBC News show she was previously convicted of break-and-enter and assault with a weapon. Then last week, police allege she killed a woman she knew in Toronto before traveling on public transit to murder 2 men at random in Hamilton and Niagara Falls. Hamilton Police Staff Sergeant Jason Cattle says all attacks were unprovoked.
We are at this point comfortable to release that all 3 victims were stabbed.
In court, a lawyer for the 30-year-old accused questioned whether she's fit to stand trial. Kaldar's been ordered to appear in mental health court, and she remains in custody for now. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Hamilton.
A small town in northeastern BC gripped by a wave of violent crime may soon get a measure of relief from the RCMP. In the past 3 years, 11 people have either gone missing or been murdered in Dawson Creek. The Mounties have made no arrests in any of those cases, but an investigation by the CBC's Fifth Estate has pushed police to promise arrests will be made soon. Mark Kelly reports.
The town is scared.
Julie Hosak's 24-year-old son Cole disappeared from Dawson Creek on New Year's Eve after getting into a dispute over a pool table. 9 months later, he's still missing, feared dead.
He was the fourth person to go missing, and there were 7 murders that year in a town of 12,000 people. That's not normal.
It was a Fifth Estate viewer who urged us to come to Dawson Creek to investigate the violent crime spree, believed to be related in part to turf battles over drug sales. Families of the victims are frustrated with the RCMP, which has made no arrests in any of the cases. Laura Lambert is the aunt of 2 cousins, Cree women, who went missing months apart, both later found dead.
Where are the police?
They don't care. That's the way I look at it. They've been given so many tips about these people missing. You don't see them doing anything.
You want your town back?
We want our kids back.
These investigations sometimes take very, very lengthy periods of time.
We took the town's frustrations to RCMP Superintendent Sanjaya Vijayakun.
The goal is an arrest. It really is arrest, laying charges, and then convictions. In my opinion, for some of the cases, I think, within the next 6 months, we will have some level of success.
While arrests won't bring back the dead, people here feel it's a critical step to help them take their town back. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Dawson Creek, BC.
The Fifth Estate's 50th season kicks off tonight at 9 p.m., 9:30 in Newfoundland. You can watch on CBC TV, CBC Gem, or YouTube. Officials in Florida say more than a dozen deaths are being linked to Hurricane Milton. The storm tore through the central part of the state yesterday, and while it was not as bad as expected, Milton left a path of destruction in its wake. Jennifer Glass brings us the story of one couple who's faced 2 hurricanes in as many weeks.
Anna Marie Island sits at the entrance of Tampa Bay. Dawn Erickson and her husband Jim Springer have lived there since 2022 in a house that's been in Dawn's family for over 50 years. It was paradise until Hurricane Helene 2 weeks ago. Something happened that had never happened before. The island was entirely underwater.
So we lost 2 cars. Our property was flooded. After Helene, we couldn't live there. There's a lot of mold everywhere.
They moved to the mainland, returning to clear out their house. Then this week, Hurricane Milton struck.
A lot of trees knocked over, a lot of big branches down, power lines just laying on the ground.
Because Milton didn't hit Tampa directly, the storm surge that could have devastated the area didn't happen. For now, they aren't allowed onto the island to assess the damage.
I don't know when they'll let residents back on to go see their property. We're not sure what we're going to find.
They had already begun applications to get federal help after Hurricane Helene. They aren't sure what they'll need after Milton.
I'm going to speak for both of us. We're mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted.
Yesterday was a rare day of respite. Now there are chores to do and the wait to see whether they'll be able to get back over the bridge to their home. Jennifer Glass for CBC News, Jacksonville, Florida.
And finally, a harrowing few hours for 12 tourists trapped 300 meters underground in a Colorado mine. Came to an end last night. They got stuck way down below after an elevator broke down, but crews were eventually able to rescue them 6 hours later. Teller County Sheriff Jason Mikesell.
They all came up very safely, 4 at a time, so we could get them through the surface. They're all in good spirits. We fed them pizza. That's what they wanted. There's a good news story at the end of this.
A group of 11 were brought up earlier. One person did die, but authorities aren't saying who or how. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, remember, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and thank you so much for Corey Funk for filling in for me last couple days. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Nice to have you along here on the program on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. It's 6:10 a.m. and in Winnipeg, we're going to head to a high of 15 degrees. Abby's in with a full forecast in just a moment. Cold spot right now, Thompson -3, Victoria Beach sitting at -10. This hour on the program, we're going to be talking about the Westworth United Church in Winnipeg. They're inviting families to take in a food security workshop, just in time for World Food Day, which is coming up next week. We're going to talk to one of the organizers to find out why and what's been going on in that part of Winnipeg. In addition, this hour on the show, more on the investigation you might have heard about just now on World Report about trucking. Some truck driving schools say they are offering mandatory entry-level training, and they're cutting corners, and critics say it's leading to more dangerous highways and roads. That's a report from Marketplace. We're going to hear more about it this hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, speaking of reports, and get an update on the news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, staff at St. Boniface Hospital say they are anxious, and a doctor is now calling for more to be done to prevent violence there. Last Saturday, the Winnipeg Police Tactical Unit rushed to the hospital. A hospital memo says a patient had knives and had been acting erratically. Dr. Noam Cates wants the hospital to take additional steps to prevent these types of incidents. Refugees from North Korea are sharing their stories of hardship and survival with Winnipeggers this week. At the University of Manitoba yesterday, 3 refugees recounted the challenges they faced living in North Korea. One tried to escape 3 times before finally settling in South Korea 10 years ago. Myong-hee Kim is now a PhD student in Seoul and is learning English. We're going to hear more from her in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into this weather forecast. Hello, Abby. How are you?
Good morning. Just feeling excited because last night was amazing. The skies were like really on display, similar to what we had in May.
Oh, yeah?
It was like real. The KP was on the almost close to the extreme side. It was on the high side, and this though the downside, we had an overcast last night, so not a lot of people saw it. You had to wait till after midnight, close to 1
Did you do that?
Oh no, I was like more of like the wise guy. I had my nap all day. I slept all day, and I waited till like after 2 a.m.
Wow!
So I've been up since 2 a.m. Just saying. I can just let me see if I can find some photos for you, but it was really, really beautiful.
Look at this.
This is this morning.
If you're
actually
watching our YouTube, by the way, I just need to describe this. So, did you take this morning?
This is Fort Richmond, just right in front of the school.
Wow!
At 4:30 this morning.
So Fort Richmond Collegiate.
Collegiate, yeah.
Okay, at 4:30 this morning. So what we're looking at, listeners, here, and if you're on YouTube, go on YouTube and check it out. Is just a beautiful wide shot of the sky and northern lights right in the city, and those are really, you know what I love about those? They're vibrant, but they're actually a little bit muted. It almost looks like a painting.
Yeah, that's what I saw this morning. So it's still happening now. If you can still see some things that look like dotted clouds out there, it's actually the northern lights still on display out there.
Beautiful shots there, Abby. Love those. I'll try to get it up on Facebook later too. Okay, the weather today?
We're going to see sunny conditions in most of the regions. We're seeing highs of 5 in Churchill to 16 in Brandon, and then for tonight the temperatures will be dropping, bringing clouds that would come with I know we don't want to hear this, a chance of rain tomorrow, but right now Winnipeg, we are at 9 degrees. It's clear outside. We'll see sun conditions today, some light winds, and then we warm up to 15. Up north, we're seeing -1 in Thompson and 2 in Churchill, and down south, we're seeing temperatures hover from 3 in Dauphin to 7 for Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris. Right now, 9 degrees in Winnipeg, heading to a high of 15.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, how are you?
Good, doing good.
Good. Did you have a good time in Lactobani yesterday?
So great there.
Communities in Focus,
Oh,
CBC
beautiful.
Manitoba's initiative to get out of town.
Yeah, it was actually it was tough to leave because I felt like we were it was a whirlwind. We were only there for I think just over 24 hours, but like it just felt like the community just like welcomed us right in. We just had so much fun.
Awesome. Now we're going to have more stories from Lactobani,
Yes,
of course, because
yes.
Emily Brass, Natalie Kidwai have been all there. And Nadia Kidwai have been there all week.
Yeah, and I've got a recorder full of tape. I'm excited to cut together with
good.
stories too.
Good. The commute this morning, what should we know?
Yeah, really quiet so far. I haven't heard of any major issues out there, but like always, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, over the last 5 years, Canadians have been facing higher levels of food insecurity. Whether you're a single parent, you live alone or without kids, according to Food Banks Canada, 1 in 4 Manitobans face difficulties with putting food on the table. It's why a community church in Winnipeg has been stepping up to help. The Westworth United Church on Grosvenor is holding a food security workshop on Sunday. This is the day before World Food Day, and we wanted to hear more about it. So Barbara Wines is up early this morning. She's event organizer with the Westworth Church. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning.
So tell me why you're putting this event on. What prompted this for you?
Well, for a number of years, we've been assisting organizations with food and money to support them, like One Just City, West Broadway site, and Rossbrook House, and others. And now we've started. The situation doesn't seem to be getting any better, so we thought we needed to learn more about what is going on in Winnipeg and what else is being happening. So. And it's World Food Day coming up, so we thought that would be a good opportunity to make people aware of some of the initiatives that are happening in Winnipeg.
What makes you say the situation isn't getting any better? Can you give us a parallel of sort of maybe when you started doing work with these organizations and what you've been seeing in terms of the need not changing or growing?
Well, there was a point where we would, for instance, we would provide lunch at West Broadway for once a month. At noon, and there'd be maybe 80 people come for lunch. And now, there's about 150 and more servings, and sometimes, and the needs, that's just one example.
What types of things will people learn from the workshop? What do you have planned?
Well, this workshop is to make us aware of some of the initiatives. We have someone from the Natalie Riddiger from University of Manitoba going to talk about the situation, the current situation, and about food security and insecurity. And we have Almost Urban Vegetables, which is one of the farms that provides food at food markets, and along with accepting coupons that are given. Food Rescue, which is looking at food, and Leftovers Foundation. They're organizations that many of us don't know a lot about, and examples of organizations that many of us don't know about, and how they're supporting the availability of food for people.
Are you noticing when you talk about the populations you've been working with and the groups you work with and trying to help out with, are you noticing any trends? Are you seeing older people that are coming in for the food programs you're involved with, or is it?
We would more support other organizations, so the trends aren't right at our church itself.
Fair enough, yeah.
We're more supporting them. It ranges. I think originally we didn't have children coming to those organizations, although Rossbrook House, when we support them, that is all children.
Yeah. In terms of why you think this will be beneficial, people learning about what is accessible to them to help their needs in other ways, what makes you think that people don't have that education around these things?
Well, I'm the it's it's a good question. Even though we try to keep involved, I didn't know a lot about Food Rescue or the Leftovers Foundation and how they're trying to get food so that it's not wasted,
Like even though you're on the ground floor, you didn't even know about it.
Yeah, there are, we know about Harvest, we know about a whole, some of the other One Just City, other Agape Table and all of those, but we don't really know about where the food comes from and how they get food and who provides that food. And so we thought we would look at that angle of it as well.
What concerns you the most about food insecurity in Winnipeg right now, Barbara?
Oh, well, people have the right to have good food for a better life. If you don't have good, healthy food, then it's very difficult to have a good life. And also, the dollars people have don't go far enough. I mean, children can't learn, people are tired, and they don't have enough money really at the moment to be able to get good, healthy food. It's difficult, in particular, to get fresh food.
Good luck with your event on Sunday. I know that it is 3 o'clock at Westworth Church, and the event's $10 at the door with a light dinner provided. Do I have that all right?
That's right.
All right.
Simple supper.
Take care. Have a wonderful weekend, and thanks for what you do in community.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's Barbara Wines. She's the event organizer with Westworth United Church. So once again, the food security workshop is happening on Sunday. It is at 3 o'clock. It's at Westworth Church. That's at 1750 Grosvenor Avenue. It is $10 at the door with, as she described, a light dinner provided.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Well, it is 9 degrees in Winnipeg. As Abby said, a high of 15 today. Clear tonight for that Bomber game if you're heading out for it. And then into the weekend, we're going to kind of have a bit of a mixed bag. Could see some showers tomorrow afternoon, as Abby was mentioning. And so it depends when you're having, if you are gathering for Thanksgiving, whether or not you're going to have a rainy day or not. It depends on the day you're going to pick, I think. Well, speaking of Thanksgiving, as it approaches, many Canadians might be excited for a long weekend filled with food and family, if that's your tradition. But some might be working, especially if you're trying to earn some cash and you work in the gig economy. A recent poll by Securian Canada and the Angus Reid Institute shows almost 25% of Canadians are turning to gig work. Joining us to talk about it, David McDonald. He's a senior economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Good morning.
Good morning.
How do we, just before we look at the stats here and what's driving this up, how do we define gig economy and gig work for people that are just sort of getting into this? What does that mean in 2024?
Well, this survey defines it very broadly. And so, in essence, it's any additional money that you're making outside of a traditional employee-employer relationship. So it's going to include things like Uber, but it's also going to include folks that sell things on Etsy or, photograph weddings on weekends, or do some extra graphic design or video work. So it's an extremely broad definition. It's basically any additional work in addition to traditional employment.
Got it. Why do you think it is then nearly a quarter of Canadians are driven towards this type of work?
Well, certainly the worsening employment picture is going to be playing a role. The unemployment rate was 5% in January of last year. It's over 6.5% now, and we're going to get more data on that in about an hour. The other piece of it's going to be cost of living. The cost of goods and services has risen rapidly over the last couple of years, and wages are not keeping pace. That's something that's particularly true for lower income households, so the bottom 20% of households. Their costs have gone up $2,000 since 2019, but their wages have only gone up $1,500. And so to try to bridge that gap, they're likely turning to things like the gig economy and doing extra work on the side in addition to traditional employment to try to make ends meet.
And what should people understand comes with working in the gig economy, or maybe I should say doesn't come with working in the gig economy? What's the reality of those types of positions?
Yeah, for most of the folks that are working extra money on the side, they have a job. So they have a full-time or part-time job, and they're trying to boost their income, supplement their incomes. They're boosting their incomes by, on average, about 15% by taking on this extra work on the side. Now, for some, this is their main job. And so for those folks that are working completely outside employer-employee relationships, they don't have a part-time or full-time job. There's about 1 million Canadians that are in that position. So they're self-employed. They have no employees, no office, and they only have a single client. And that might be, a closer definition of what people think of as gig work. There's about 1 million Canadians who do that full-time. About 500,000 of those are doing it on a digital platform. So this is food delivery, say, or ride sharing. The key question for me for these folks is, if you already have a job, would you be doing this extra work if your job just paid you more or if you get more hours? And it looks like in most of the cases they wouldn't. For about 75% of these workers, they're doing this extra work on the side because they need the money, either because their costs are going up or they're trying to save for retirement or save for a big purchase. They're not doing it because they love it. There are portions that do it because they love it and they like flexibility and so on, but they're in the clear minority of folks that are working extra money on the side.
Now, the poll also looks at who, demographically is involved in gig work. It indicates younger and racialized Canadians in particular are drawn to this kind of gig work. Why do you think these groups are more inclined to participate in the gig economy besides the obvious, which is I don't think it existed, frankly, for some other generations before them, right? Like I'm a Gen Xer and there wasn't anything like going online and starting something or delivery food services in the same way. It was just very different. But why is it growing so much?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say drawn potentially as much as forced. It's likely because they can't get traditional employment. Youth or racialized Canadians are often the last in, the first out of jobs when things get tight in the labor market. We talked earlier about the unemployment rate generally, just over 6.5%. Youth unemployment is 14.5%. I mean, that's well over double that general rate. This was a particularly bad summer, the summer that just ended. For students looking for work, it's actually the worst since 2019. For certain racialized groups, you see similarly high unemployment. So for Black Canadians, Arab Canadians, again, more than double the general rate. And you put those two together, if you are both young and racialized, then the picture is actually much, much worse. So if you're a young Black, young Chinese, young Arab Canadian, a quarter of those folks, can't find work. And that's 4 times the general unemployment rate. And so, gig work is often pitched as, freedom, you make your own schedule, you're your own boss, that sort of thing. But for many, it's their only choice because discrimination and a weak labor market means they just can't get a regular job.
What does the rise of this kind of work mean to the overall Canadian economy?
Well, certainly as we see an uptick in self-employment versus more traditional employee-employer employment, that's often a sign of a worsening labor market. So the worst that we've actually seen it was there were 1.4 million Canadians who were self-employed in 2020. It's actually slightly better than where we were in 2020. Certainly gig work can be a reflection of folks facing discrimination in the traditional labor market or a labor market that's not that tight. And so folks are trying to make money in other ways. Now, obviously, it'd be better if there was less discrimination in the labor market. That's a better solution here. But this is, one of the ways that people have found to try to get around that discrimination. The other thing in the rise of gig work is in some ways a story as old as working. It's employers trying to save a penny while skipping out on their obligations to workers. They say, look, you're not my employee. You're an independent contractor because we communicate through an app. That's not a new story. I mean, it's often that employers are trying to skip out on their obligations to things like labor law, to minimum wages, to contributions to key support programs like employment insurance and the Canada Pension Plan. It's just under a new guise here, which is, we do it through an app. Therefore, you're not my employee anymore. You're an independent person who, we don't have obligations to like all other employers.
And I know you've partially answered this already, but what is the way forward then, and what role you're talking about the role that employers might have to play moving forward? But who should be most concerned that so many Canadians are turning to gig work, and is there a wider role for the government?
Yeah, I mean, certainly regulation of labor markets is a key role that governments play in making sure that an even playing field for all employers, and trying to circumvent those employers that are trying to skip out on their responsibilities. So misclassification of workers as independent contractors instead of as employees, I think, is a key way that government can look at this. I think more broadly, too, creating a tighter labor market gives workers more power and can yield less discrimination because folks, employers can't be as discriminating if they don't have as many people applying for jobs, and so therefore they're more likely to hire traditionally discriminated against groups. And so if you aren't fostering a tighter labor market because you're bringing in rightsless workers like temporary foreign workers, then you end up with more folks looking to potentially gig work to try to fill that gap if they can't get a regular job. And so certainly cutting back on temporary foreign workers in areas where they're clearly not needed and letting wages rise and letting, more power to workers rise is a way that you can also combat some of this forcing workers to do other types of work to make ends meet.
We'll leave it there for this morning, David. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll watch for those numbers coming out later today.
Thanks for having me.
That's David McDonald, a senior economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Now, speaking of numbers, coming up we have our business report, so we'll check in on the markets. But also, TD Bank is being fined $3 billion US. We'll get those details coming up in your business report, so stay with us here on CBC. I'm RC Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And besides the business news coming up, we'll have more on that marketplace investigation into how long-distance truck drivers are trained in this country and some concerns that have been uncovered by our team, colleagues in our team at Marketplace. So stay with us. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 9 degrees. It's going to be a sunny day, but after a few days in the 20s, you're going to feel the cool. A high today of 15. An armed patient at a St. Boniface Hospital medical ward last weekend is now prompting calls for increased safety measures. CBC's Edzidu Loverin reports.
Police are investigating after being called to respond to a man wielding knives at St. Boniface Hospital. The man was a patient on a medical ward and was said to be armed and acting erratically. ER Dr. Noam Cates says staff are filled with anxiety following the incident and wants the institution to do more to decrease violence at the hospital. Darlene Jackson is the president of the Manitoba Nurses Union. She says weapons are a growing issue at all healthcare facilities across Manitoba, and says the employer and province need to ensure all staff and patients are being kept safe. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says 16 institutional safety officers have been hired and trained to work at St. Boniface. Edzidu Loverin, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some regular Winnipeg transit users are worried about their safety after another violent incident. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Police say they were stabbed and robbed by 3 young women. Diana Euland is an educational assistant. She takes the bus almost every day. She would like to see the new transit security team do more patrols around bus shelters.
Knowing that I'm paying money to get on the bus and my safety might still be compromised, that does raise a huge concern.
The victims of Monday's attack were treated and released from hospital. Police are still looking for 3 suspects. The province is once again lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer. The minimum age for self-referral screenings will go from 50 to 40 by the end of 2026. It comes weeks after the province had announced it would lower the age to 45 by the end of next year. The opposition Tories had pushed for the age to be lowered to 40. PC health critic Kathleen Cook introduced a private member's bill earlier this month calling for a hard deadline of December 2026. Cook says the government's announcement is a result of the Tories' efforts.
I think it's a direct result of the debate we had in the chamber today. 16 days ago, the Minister of Health said they could only get to age 45 by the end of 2025. And now today they've come out and said they can in fact get to age 40 by the end of 2026.
Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera denies the government was making decisions based on pressure from the Tories. At the ASEAN Summit in Laos, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke about the pharmacare program. The program is meant to provide diabetes medication and birth control devices. The legislation is now law after receiving royal assent last night. And Trudeau says he can't wait to start signing deals with the provinces to get meds and supplies to those who need them.
Moving forward on pharmacare negotiations with the provinces that will help Canadians in their health and help them in their pocketbook. But that's something we need to work on right now. That's something all parliamentarians, if they're listening to the constituents, should be working on.
Pharmacare is part of the now dead supply and confidence agreement between the New Democrats and the Liberal government. Health Minister Mark Holland will deliver an update this morning on the program's rollout. Refugees from North Korea are sharing stories of hardship and survival with Winnipeggers this week. At the University of Manitoba yesterday, 3 refugees recounted the challenges they faced while living in North Korea. Myong Hee Kin tried to escape 3 times before finally settling in South Korea 10 years ago. She is a PhD student and she lives in Seoul now and is learning English.
In North Korea, I couldn't have a dream and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't travel other countries and I couldn't know other countries' information. And then I couldn't do watching movies and listen to music. Even I couldn't on the jeans, put on jeans.
Freedom Speakers International organized the event to raise awareness about the challenges faced by North Korean refugees. The group also aims to build a path towards immigration to Canada. Well, this year's winner of the Nobel Peace Prize has just been announced.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo.
Nihon Hidankyo is a Japanese nuclear disarmament organization. It was established in 1956 by survivors of the American atomic bomb attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Considering the ongoing wars being waged in the Middle East, Ukraine, and Sudan, there had been speculation the Nobel Committee was considering not awarding the Peace Prize this year. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And as always, find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, whilst we're talking about Thanksgiving this weekend, and people will participate in all kinds of different ways, but Corey just had the best line. I was like, hey, you guys, should we have some chat about Thanksgiving? Corey, what did you say?
Well, I was just saying how stoked I am that I don't actually have to worry about like cooking for my picky toddler all weekend. All I have to do is show up at family gatherings and just like drop stuff in front of them and just hope for the best.
Toddlers are the craziest judges of the food, right, Hev?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because I mean, either they're going to throw it at you or they'll rub it all over their face.
Yeah.
That's a good sign. The rubbing on their body, like just
Right.
eating it.
And the more effort you put in, the less likely they are to actually like eat it.
Turkey on my hand,
Yeah.
gravy
Oh,
on
no.
my shoulder.
Yeah.
Dinner's good.
No, just you got to eat a diaper right to the bath afterwards. That's exactly how it's good to go. Get all that cranberry sauce off you.
We're going to have a mixed bag of a weekend depending on when you're celebrating with family. Abby, what's the forecast look like for this? Is a regional forecast now.
Yeah, for this Thanksgiving weekend, we are looking at, we're going to start with a sunny day. Most of the regions will be seeing that today. We're going to see highs ranging from 5 in Churchill to 16 in Brandon. Right now, it's 9 degrees in Winnipeg. It's clear outside. I'll mention again, if you're lucky, you might catch a glimpse of the northern lights still on display. Today, we should see more of like sunny conditions, light breeze. Then we warm up to 15 degrees. Some clouds will roll in later tonight when we cool off to 3. Brandon, 0, mainly clear at this time. Later in the day, you see some sunny conditions. You warm up to about 16 degrees. And then for tonight, you have a chance of showers in the forecast. Thompson is at -1 and mostly cloudy at this time. We will see a mix of sun and clouds today. And then as you get closer to the noon period, you should be seeing more like a sunny condition trying to make its way. You warm up to a high of 10. Churchill, 2 degrees, heading to a high of 5. Dauphin is a 3. It's going to be mainly sunny today. You're warming up to a high of 14. Gimli's seeing clear skies at 6 degrees. Today's forecast for the Interlake region calls for sunny conditions with light breeze and a high of 14. Similar situation we're seeing in Steinbach, 7 and clear, heading to a high of 15. And for Morris, we're looking at clear skies at 7 degrees. The Pembina Valley region will see plenty of sunshine today, light breeze, you warm up to 15, and then some clouds will roll in tonight and you deep to 4 degrees. Overall, it's a clear Friday morning down south and cloudy up north. We're seeing 9 degrees in Winnipeg, plenty of sunshine in the forecast, and we do warm up to a high of 15 though. I think this is the last lap of enjoying a lot of like that warm temperature.
Yeah, it might be. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
The commute this morning, Corey.
Yeah, really quiet so far. I imagine there's probably a bunch of smart people who took today off. So I imagine it won't be too busy out there. But if there is a problem, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see some, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Let's get into business news now. Crystal Ramlakan joins us via Zoom with our report this Friday morning. Hi there, Crystal.
Hello. Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with TD Bank because they're being fined $3 billion US. What are the details on why? What's happening?
Yeah, so the bank has pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including money laundering, after it was found that TD had significant systemic breakdowns in its transaction monitoring program. So the U.S. Attorney General says the bank created an environment that allowed financial crime to flourish. So 3 money laundering networks transferred more than $670 million through TD bank accounts over a 6-year period. And at least one of those schemes involved 5 bank employees laundering drug money. So Richard Powers is an associate professor at the Rottam School of Management at the University of Toronto for more on this.
It isn't unprecedented either. Criminals are always looking for ways to launder their money. And they did implant some people into the TD system that were able to give access and then approvals as well. Again, any amount of background checks and everything is not going to reveal everything. And these people are very sophisticated. They know how to play this game. Who knows what backgrounds they put up in place? They obviously could have been false. They could have been, just made up. Who knows? But in the end, they were in a place to facilitate these transactions, which led to the charges that were leveled.
Now, the CEO says the bank has taken full responsibility and says it will be making the investments, changes, and enhancements required to deliver on its commitments. And Marcy, the bank is now facing an asset cap that puts limits on its growth in the U.S., so that's not great for its business.
Let's talk about the latest job numbers that are going to be released today. What are we expecting to see in them?
Yeah, so Statistics Canada is expected to provide its latest snapshot of the job market later this morning when it releases its labor force survey for the month of September. Economists polled by Reuters are forecasting the economy added 27,000 jobs last month and that employment went up to 6.7%. Now, the economy added 22,000 jobs in August as the unemployment rate rose to 6.6%. Meanwhile, the Bank of Canada is expected to release its Business Outlook survey and its Canadian Survey of Consumer Expectations as well this morning. And the reports come ahead of the central bank's interest rate decision later this month on October 23rd. So if it continues to see that the economy is slowing down, we could continue to see interest rate cuts.
And CEO Elon Musk unveiled the long-awaited robo-taxi last night. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, so he actually arrived in the Cyber Cab, which has 2 gull-wing doors and no steering wheels or pedals.
We expect the cost to be below $30,000. We expect to be in production with the Cyber Cab, which is really highly optimized for autonomous transport in probably, well, I tend to be a little optimistic with timeframes. But in 2026. So, yeah. Before 2027, let me put it that way. When you get in, you'll see it's really quite a wild experience to just be in a car with no steering wheel, no pedals, no controls, and it feels great.
But Marcy, analysts and industry experts say establishing robo-taxis could take years, especially because there's a lot of safety and reliability concerns. Now, Musk also surprised with the robo-van, which can carry up to 20 people, but he offered few other details about it. And Musk had previously said he planned to operate a fleet of self-driving Tesla taxis that passengers could hail through an app, but he made no mention of that app at last night's event. Tesla is actually at risk of posting its first ever decline in deliveries this year as buying incentives have failed to attract enough customers to its EV lineup. That's according to Reuters calculations based on third quarter earnings. And price cuts meant to offset high interest rates have also squeezed profit margins at the company.
It's interesting. I was Google imaging it on my phone while you were talking about it because I wanted to see it again. And it's pretty slick looking. It kind of reminds me of that movie, The Fifth Element from back in the day. Cars were flying around, kind of the same thing. What's going on in the markets today?
So in Europe, markets have slipped as investors digested fresh U.S. inflation data, which came in above expectations. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, China stocks led declines in Asia-Pacific markets after key Wall Street benchmarks fell overnight. So Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down 58 cents to $75.24 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $9.10 to $2,639 U.S. per ounce, and the dollar is down just over 1/10 cent to 72.7 cents U.S.
All right, Chris Lee Ramlakan, thank you.
Okay, have a good long weekend, Marcy.
Thanks, you as well. That's Crystalie Ramlakan from our CBC Business Desk. You're listening to Information Radio here on 89.3 FM. Well, still ahead in this half hour of the program, a marketplace investigation has revealed that trucking is an industry with many problems. Some driving schools, corrupt examiners, safety issues, little enforcement are just some of the issues. Asha Tomlinson has evidence of all of this happening and why it could be making your commute more dangerous. So we're going to talk to Asha in the next couple of minutes here on Information Radio. About 5 minutes, we'll connect with her for a special edition of her report, which you may be hearing part of on World Report this morning. So we'll get some more details. Right now, though, we were just talking about Thanksgiving this weekend, whether you're planning to gather with family and friends. And often, of course, this is one of those holidays where food is at the center of everything. So we're wondering, are you going the traditional route if you're gathering and cooking a turkey, or do you take a different route? CBC's Jane Testar hit the streets of Winnipeg to find out what's on your Thanksgiving menu.
This year we're just doing turkey, pierogies and stuffing and carrots. We like to roast the carrots. Yeah, potatoes and gravy and typical. Yeah.
We're having turkey, ham, squash, sweet potatoes, cranberries, and a bunch of vegetable stuff, and potatoes, of course, and gravy and all that stuff.
Turkey and ham?
Yes. We don't always do the ham, but for sure we always do the turkey.
I love sweet and sour meatballs with Thanksgiving type food. I feel like some people would be like, not really our vibe for the holiday, but for me, always, always.
I'm not picky as long as there's lots of stuffing. An extra plate at the end as well.
What is it about stuffing that turns you crank?
It's versatility. You can put it on a bun, you can add gravy, round out a salad even with some stuffing. Goes with everything.
So we usually prepare like baked salmon and buttered shrimps. That's, we consider it a special day, so we actually prepare those special meals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's been a long-standing tradition for you?
Yes.
So this is my second Thanksgiving here in Canada. So majorly probably at my in-laws, she's familiar with the big whole chicken in the oven and probably jollof rice. It's an African meal. Yeah, it's jollof rice. Oh. So we call it jollof rice, pepper jollof rice. Rice, tomatoes, bell pepper, and the spicy pepper, shrimps. Yeah, and then chicken.
Rutabaga and those sorts. We'll maybe make a salad as well.
What is a rutabaga?
It's a beautiful kind of cantaloupe orange. It's a perfect accompaniment with mashed potatoes. Yeah. It's stunning.
Is it a turnip?
Yes.
Pumpkin ice cream from Sweet Tops.
How about entrees?
Ice cream?
So you don't really care about the meal, you're there for dessert?
Yeah.
What's your Thanksgiving dessert of choice?
My preference is to actually just have panna cotta and ice cream.
Costco pumpkin pie. People go crazy for them, and it's worth it though. It's so good.
Do you think you'd ever just one year buck tradition and go, too bad, we're having pizza?
No, because I eat pizza so much anyways. Like, it's like a common food nowadays.
Yeah.
So
Nothing special
about it.
Yeah.
Or turkey and that's special.
Yeah, it's tradition. It's tradition. You need the bird at Thanksgiving and the ham at Christmas, if that's something you celebrate. If that's your lane you run in. But yeah, it's tradition, and it's kind of like when your dad tells you to cut the grass and you're a kid and you get that nostalgia. You're like, yeah, that's how we've done it before, and that's how we're going to do it now.
It just seems right.
It feels right, yeah. Cliche. It's a good cliche.
It's a good cliche.
Yeah.
So are you doing Thanksgiving this weekend yourself? That was CBC's Jane Testar out in Winnipeg asking what you're serving, what's going to be on your Thanksgiving dinner table. Man, there sounded like some good options there. I loved it. You can hear more of Jane, by the way. She hosts the CBC Comedy Factory podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to let us know what's going to be on your table this weekend, give us a call this morning. We'll get those calls on air and have some food fun. 788-3205. One of my favorite Thanksgivings was when all of our different cultures collided at the table, because it just happened that year together. It was like people were bringing their own, dishes. My mom kind of made a turkey, and then people came with other things. So my sister's mother-in-law came, and we had like pancit and lumpia. And then my mom made some pierogies as well, as I recall. And then there were meatballs. My aunt used to be famous for her meatballs. I love when everything clashes together and you get it all. It's my personal fave. It's 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3. I'm RC Marcusa. You're listening to CBC this morning, live from downtown Winnipeg, where it's 9 degrees. It's clear, and our high today is going to be 15 degrees in the sunshine. Well, up next on the show, as you may have heard on World Report, trucking is the lifeline of Canada's economy, and chances are you've driven next to a big rig on your commute in the last little while. But there's a CBC Marketplace investigation that's raising some major concerns about the training and testing of truckers and how it's playing out on our highways and roads. Now, host of CBC Marketplace, Asha Tomlinson, is here live this morning with us with more to share, to break down some of the reasons on why you might be concerned. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's begin with why you're investigating the trucking industry in the first place.
Yeah, it really evolved out of our investigation from last season into beginner driver education certificates, or BDEs. We checked out 20 driving schools. A lot of them offered us forged documents and fraudulent certificates for a fee that would allow us to, take a drive test sooner or give us a break on insurance. But what we were hearing from industry folks back then was this goes deeper. There's more to this story. We couldn't find the actual proof or evidence at that time, but it stayed on our radar, and here we are now.
So what was the tipping point? How did you find enough evidence for the latest investigation?
It all started with a leaked memo from our insider. So she works at one of Ontario's drive test centers, which offers licensing and testing across the province. These centers are managed by a private company, though, Serco. Serco's VP of Operations, late last year, Gary Cook, sent out a memo saying there are a number of driving examiners who have been accepting bribes for issuing road test passes and falsifying experience on driver records. He said they've either resigned or been terminated because of this quote-unquote inappropriate and illegal behavior. But our insider says that doesn't go far enough, right? That public safety is at risk. She feels compelled to speak out about what's happening behind the scenes. We've hidden her identity and altered her voice because she's scared of losing her job. She says this corruption, though, is especially concerning when it comes to new truck drivers because of the danger it could pose when they're driving on our highways right across Canada. Have a listen to what she told us.
These people took bribes, gave licenses for a murder weapon.
That's a really strong statement. What do you mean by that?
I mean that in any accident of a transport versus a car, more than likely the person in that car is not going to walk away.
Have you passed students you shouldn't have?
That keeps me up at night, and I think I probably have.
Knowing all of this, how do you feel about driving on the highways?
I don't. I avoid highway driving as much as possible. If I can take other routes, I will.
And what's your worry?
Well, that one day it'll be my family member that dies.
Stunning revelations. Look, when she talks about passing students she shouldn't have, she's talking about what she says, Serco, keeping track of how many students each examiner passes and fails, and so it leads to a lot of pressure. Serco's response to all this, they say they've informed authorities, they have fired the people responsible, and that they do follow all testing standards set by Ontario's government.
Now, another piece of this is the training, trucker training, right? So wouldn't drivers be properly trained before they're taking their road test?
You would think so. And there is a huge demand, as we know, for truckers. No wonder there are more truck driving schools popping up. What we're finding, though, is that there are some willing to take shortcuts to help get drivers on the roads faster. Ontario was the first to launch a program called Mandatory Entry-Level Training, or MELT. Other provinces have followed suit, including Manitoba. It was introduced back in 2019. But in Ontario, it requires truck drivers to get at least 103.5 hours of training before taking a road test. We visited some schools with hidden cameras, and there are people willing to take your money, thousands of dollars, and get you certified, but you're not getting the proper training if you're going into trucking. They'll do things like train to the test, telling you exactly what you need to do in order to pass on the first try. That's not real world driving skills. They won't give you any actual classroom lessons. That's a MELT requirement. You need a third of your time in a classroom learning theory. And then there was one guy at one school who said, don't worry about, that limit, that 103.5 number. You could do it in a shorter amount of time. Have no fears. This is a widespread problem we're hearing, so much so there are now carriers putting their new recruits through a finishing program when they're hired, just to give them that extra training to ensure they're ready to hit the road.
So what kind of reaction are you getting from the government to all of this?
Yeah, truck training schools fall under Ontario's Ministry of Colleges and Universities. So we reached out to them. They say they act on complaints. They work to keep standards high. But a lot of fingers are pointing to the Ministry of Transportation as the most responsible. It came up with MELT in the first place and hired Serco to run testing rather. We did repeatedly ask for an on-camera interview with Ontario's Transport Minister Prabmeet Sarkaria. He declined. We caught up with him then at a news conference that he was holding to get some answers, and here's what he had to say. We have an internal memo that's from the company that runs Ontario's drive test centers. It admits that there are driving examiners who have taken bribes for road test passes. What's your government going to do about it?
There's absolutely no room for any of that. As soon as it does come to our attention, that individual or those individuals, once investigated, would be taken out immediately.
The minister also, speaking to Trucker Training, says they're investigating, catching the bad actors out there. He admits more work needs to be done. But I got to say, as my final point, as a solution to all this, industry experts and sources say there needs to be a Red Seal apprenticeship program, kind of like what electricians, or plumbers go through. And that could provide a layer of confidence that what you see is what you get, that the truckers we all drive beside are qualified and properly trained. So they're saying treat trucking like a trade.
We should do some follows on that today here in Manitoba, especially given some of the recent terrible accidents that we had involving on our highways, involving
for sure.
multiple different vehicles. Yeah.
I'd be interested in that, so keep me posted.
Will do. Thank you very much for this, Asha. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Asha Tomlinson, the host of Marketplace on CBC. You can watch the season premiere tonight on Marketplace. Truckload of Trouble is tonight at 8 o'clock on CBC television, or anytime, of course, you can stream on CBC Gem or on YouTube. You might be streaming on YouTube this morning. Good morning if you are. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are listening to Information Radio this morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's clear. It's 9 degrees. Winds are northwest at 4. More on the weather in just a moment. First, Heather Wells with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, the latest violent incident on Winnipeg Transit is stoking fears among some regular bus riders. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Police say they were stabbed and robbed. Lloyd Haas, a regular transit user, says he hasn't seen any improvement since 21 transit safety officers were hired earlier this year. We'll hear more from him coming up. As well, Manitoba's opposition PCs say lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer is great news, but they say more needs to be done. The province plans to lower the minimum age for self-referral screenings to 40 by the end of 2026. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, as mentioned, more in the weather here. Sunshine today and a high of 15 degrees. Pretty straight ahead, actually. Tonight, increasing cloud for the Bomber game if you're going in town, a low of 3. So it's one of those lovely fall Bomber games. Get some mitts on and enjoy. Tomorrow, some showers could begin by the afternoon. Your commute this morning, pretty good. 788-3093 if you do need to update anything. In the next hour of Information Radio, a Winnipeg fashion designer is hoping to create a fabric that can feed your garden. We'll learn about why she's doing that, so stay tuned. Plus, giving Indigenous content a boost on social media. We'll get details on a TikTok accelerator program specifically for Indigenous creators. It's now in its 4th year, and we'll find out more about how it's been growing. And to a story about nonprofits that's of some concern, just before 8 o'clock, from financial struggles to an increase in demand and a lack of resources to fill the demands, Winnipeg nonprofits have had a tough go this year. We're going to talk with Winnipeg Foundation about why organizations may be struggling in 2024 and what the trends are. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Kevin Nipatebo, Abby Adeyemi, and Corey Funk behind the glass. Thanks for joining all of us here. And don't go anywhere because World Report's coming up next. It's 1 minute to 7.
Today on The Current.
It is a common refrain. There's too much bad news and hope is hard to find. But the magazine Reasons to be Cheerful, launched by David Byrne, is now 5 years into finding the positive. We'll talk about reasons to be hopeful and cheerful coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. The pharmacare bill pushed forward by the federal NDP and Liberals is officially law. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is calling on Canada's premiers to get on board.
We need the provinces and territories to come to the table and sign agreements with us that supports Canadians and takes pressure off their household budgets as soon as possible.
Once those provincial and territorial agreements are signed, the government will be able to provide certain diabetes and birth control medications to patients for free. Here's Federal Health Minister Mark Holland.
There's going to be a day when Canadians look back and find it unimaginable that people who needed access to essential medication didn't have it. We're not there yet, but today is an absolutely essential step in that journey.
This pharmacare law was a key demand of the NDP in their deal to support the Liberal government. That deal is now defunct, and the Conservatives are pushing for an election. But Holland says he hopes all provinces and territories will sign pharmacare agreements by the spring. In Oslo,
the Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo.
The organization, founded in 1956, is made up of survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The committee is honoring Nihon Hidankyo for its activism against nuclear weapons. The prize comes in the midst of devastating conflicts raging around the world, a fact noted by Norwegian Nobel Committee Chair Jørgen Vatne Freidnes.
I think there's many people around the world that see the dark skies on the horizon, conflicts many places. But with this prize, we also want to lift, we are a global community, and the threat of nuclear weapons could threaten us all.
There is growing anxiety in Beirut. People say they are living in fear of the next Israeli airstrike. Lebanon's health ministry says 22 people were killed in the heart of the city yesterday. More than 100 others injured. Israel has not commented on that strike. CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans is in Beirut with the latest.
The missiles arrived after dark, not in the ravaged and repeatedly hit Hezbollah stronghold in the southern suburbs, but in the heart of Beirut. This morning, rescue workers were still digging through debris, firefighters turning their hoses on still smoldering piles of rubble. Resident Ala Baidoun says he thought his own building had been hit, running outside as windows shattered. We lived through previous wars, he says, and it wasn't like what we're seeing and hearing now. May God ease our minds and protect this country. On Tuesday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned the people of Lebanon they could face Gaza's fate unless they overthrew Hezbollah. One of the militant group's officials was the apparent target of last night's strikes. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati called on Israel to stop its attacks on civilians and residential neighborhoods. This morning, there was another report from the UN's interim force in Lebanon of Israeli attacks on its peacekeepers monitoring the demarcation line in southern Lebanon, the third such report in 48 hours. Earlier, spokesman Andrea Tenenti said UNIFIL had refused the Israeli request.
Whatever we can, we report. So imagine a south of Lebanon with no one at the moment. No one.
Hundreds of towns and villages in southern Lebanon have been issued with evacuation orders by the Israeli military. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Beirut.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he met face-to-face with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the ASEAN summit in Laos. But it's clear there's still a rift in the relationship between the two leaders. The CBC's Olivia Stefanovich has the details.
I had a brief exchange with Prime Minister Modi in which I emphasized that there is work that we need to do.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau chose his words carefully when he described his short encounter with India's Prime Minister.
What I've said many times is that the safety of Canadians and upholding the rule of law is one of the fundamental responsibilities of any Canadian government.
The two leaders exchanged words on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations summit. It's the second time they come face to face since Trudeau rose in the House of Commons and accused the Indian government of involvement in the killing last year of Canadian Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Canadians can know and can be confident that this is an issue that has remained at the forefront of my mind and my responsibilities as leader since the very beginning.
Just yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said India hadn't done anything to assist Canada's investigation.
We want to make sure that there's cooperation, and there's no cooperation right now.
Trudeau says his statement last September, linking India to the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil, still stands. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Vientiane, Laos.
With Canada experiencing a huge shortage of truck drivers, Marketplace has uncovered some shocking details about how some unqualified truck drivers are finding their way onto our roads, including through bribes and forged documents. Asha Tomlinson has the details.
I avoid highway driving as much as possible.
This driving examiner is speaking out, but she doesn't want to lose her job. We've altered her voice for anonymity. She shared an internal memo with CBC Marketplace from her company, Serco. It manages Ontario's drive test centres, which offers licensing and exams on behalf of the province. In it, Serco's VP of Operations says a number of examiners have been accepting bribes in exchange for a road test pass and falsifying experience on driver records. They've either resigned or been terminated. Our insider says this is especially concerning with new truck drivers.
In any accident of a transport versus a car, more than likely the person in that car is not going to walk away.
It's why new Democrat MPP Lise Vaugeois is demanding action from the Ford government.
You know, it's not just frustration because people's lives are on the line.
We asked Ontario Transport Minister Prabmeet Sarkaria for an interview. He declined, so we caught up with him at a news conference.
There's absolutely no room for any of that. As soon as it does come to our attention, that individual or those individuals, once investigated, would be taken out immediately.
Serco says they've informed authorities and fired people responsible, and that they do follow all testing standards set by Ontario's Ministry of Transportation. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch Truckload of Trouble tonight on the season premiere of Marketplace at 8 p.m. on CBC TV, GEM, and wherever you stream your CBC News. Finally, Fisher-Price is recalling one of its popular baby swings. Health Canada says the swing is connected to at least 5 infant deaths across North America, all between the ages of 1 and 3 months old. Nicole Williams reports.
Lips one way, lips the other way.
This is the video Leanna Hollett's son posted to Facebook Marketplace, trying to sell a Fisher-Price Snug-A-Swing her infant daughter recently outgrew. Unknown Unknown to her, parts of the swing are now being recalled by parent company Mattel after 5 infants between 1 and 3 months old died while sleeping in it.
It's such a popular thing. There's so many different variations of it as well. So yeah, I was pretty shocked.
More than 2 million units were sold across North America since 2012, nearly 100,000 in Canada alone. While it's no longer on store shelves, many like Hollett's son got theirs secondhand.
The swing was actually given to me from my friend's sister, and they loved it. And then my baby loved it and actually had taken many naps in it.
Health Canada says the issue is when the swings are used for sleep. The seat's headrest and an insert used to support a baby's body, when combined with added bedding, could cause them to suffocate. Holly Choi is a child safety expert and says parents need to pay attention to warning labels too.
If you see those warnings, please take them to heart, because the repercussions can be something that we just can't recover from.
Mattel says the swing itself is still safe to use, but the headrest and insert need to be removed. Owners can contact the company for a partial refund, but they're being reminded that the swing should never be used for sleep. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, you can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, welcome to Friday morning before the Thanksgiving long weekend, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app or on YouTube. Thanks for being with us wherever you're joining. Pretty decent out there. Nice clear sky, at least. It's 9 degrees. Abby's got your forecast in a moment. This hour on the show, we're going to talk about nonprofits in this city. From financial struggles to an increase in demand and a lack of resources to fill the demands. Winnipeg nonprofits have had a tough go this year. We're going to get a report from the Winnipeg Foundation about why organizations locally have been struggling. In addition, this hour on the show, what would you do if you threw an old shirt into your garden and it would feed your plants? It's something that a Winnipeg-based fashion designer is trying to create. We're going to talk to her about her research into biodegradable clothing. We'll hear more about that. So stay with us. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's at our news center this morning with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, an investigation of a patient with knives at a St. Boniface Hospital medical ward last weekend has prompted calls for increased safety measures. Now, staff at the hospital there say they are anxious, and a doctor is calling for more to be done to prevent violence. The Manitoba Nurses Union says weapons are a growing concern at healthcare facilities right across the province. Refugees from North Korea are sharing stories of hardship and survival with Winnipeggers this week. At the University of Manitoba yesterday, 3 refugees recounted the challenges they faced when they lived in North Korea. We'll hear from one of them in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in this forecast, Abby.
We're going to be seeing sunny conditions in most of the regions, highs ranging from 5 in Churchill to 16 in Brandon. And then tonight we drop down. The cool sessions will begin to come in because we have a slight chance of showers in some areas. Currently, Winnipeg, 8 degrees, clear outside, sunny and mild day ahead. We're going to see some light winds. We've been enjoying warmer days in the range of the 20s, but I think we should be saying goodbye to that. We're just going to be expecting a high of 15 today. It will begin to feel a bit cooler moving forward. For tonight, clouds will increase and then we drop to 3 degrees. Up north, we're seeing a mix of sun and clouds later. That will be clearing up by the noon period. We then see temperatures climbing close to 10 degrees. And for down south, that it's clear. We're going to see highs hovering near 16, close to 17 we might see, but it's going to be around 16 degrees. But for today, sunny, light winds, high near 16 degrees. Right now, Winnipeg, 8 degrees.
You know, we really should get Grogu a toque, I think. So we're all fans of Star Wars and The Mandalorian here at the show, so you might see Grogu in our shot there. You know, he kind of looks like Baby Yoda there. Yeah. But yeah, we really should get him a toque for the winter season. We could get a dog toque where they have openings for the ears and it would work for him.
Yeah, that would be very cute.
Yeah. So even though you can't see his feet, it'd be kind of cute if he had little booties too.
He didn't need booze. He can fly. All right, let's get into Corey Funk's traffic report.
Yeah, it's been really quiet this morning overall. Actually, haven't heard of any major issues out there. But if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, you're like, maybe people should know about this. Give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
Wow, they've got some beautiful shots on YouTube. If you join our show, I just encourage you to check it out online because some of the overhead shots that we're getting now of traffic and just watching the city wake up are really something. It is 7:13 a.m. That's Kevin Ipatebo, by the way, behind the controls. 7:13 a.m. on 89.3. Next on the show, let's actually keep Corey in studio here because the first interview coming up is one that actually you had with a local designer earlier in the week, Corey.
Yeah, so often, when you I have a couple T-shirts that are just ratty, and my wife eventually
lots of them.
Yeah, is telling me you gotta get rid of it, and it's too gnarly to go to the thrift store, so it just ends up going in the trash, and that means it's gonna end up going to a landfill or to be sent away even to another country sometimes. But there's someone here in Winnipeg who's kind of asking the question, what if you could throw your clothes into your garden and even add something positive to the soil? Her name's Andrienne Dandeneau, and she's trying to make that happen. She's CEO and head designer at Anne Molaire here in Winnipeg.
I love her clothing.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
Love Anne Molaire's clothing. Yeah,
Okay.
Put it out there. Lots of great designers in this city. Yeah,
And,
awesome.
and she's hoping that eventually, once it's done, you can maybe throw it in the ground and let it just decompose. So I spoke with her earlier this week.
Good morning.
So you can tell me about the research you're doing into this biodegradable clothing?
So we've paired up in 2020, actually it's 22, with U of M, University of Manitoba. I have to kind of go back a bit because the question that you just mentioned, could we ever throw our clothing in the landfill and for them to become compostable? So the difference between compostable and biodegradable is that compostability, the clothing becomes nutrition for the earth. So that means that the dyes are eco, they're safe, they're out, there's no chemicals. All the yarns are natural. The threads that you're sewing with is natural, can be compost. And so we know today that there are some yarns that can biodegrade. So obviously the natural wool, tencel, organic cotton, linens, they all decompose. But when that fabric is made and knit, there's processes that they go through. And we need to make sure that those processes are as clear as possible, less chemical and nutrition. So that's where I'm coming from. I wanted to figure out, okay, I needed to know how are the fabric made, where is it made, and also what kind of chemicals are they going through, and also is there ways to change things along the way so we can actually come out with a fabric that is full chemical free, full eco dyes, and also where the material can actually biodegrade and become nutrition. So we're still like far back because we've gone to the compostability or the biodegradability of it. And so what I did with the U of M is I needed to understand about my fabric, the ones that we use. And this is where in 2021 is when we started the project. We noticed that we put some fabrics in the dirt and we wanted to see how long does it biodegrade and which ones biodegrade. So we had some organic cotton blended with bamboo. We had some tencel with lycra. We had some bamboo with lycra. We had some test subjects. So we had polyester, and then we had some cotton polyester. And also we had linen and we had hemp. And so we realized that it was so cool because I think you might put some pictures up, but the fabric that biodegraded the fastest and almost nothing was the blend of the bamboo / organic cotton. So it was 70% bamboo and 30% organic cotton. And the ones that did not had lycra in it. And that's what made me think, okay, So if I want to create a compostable product, I need to figure out how to replace Lycra, because Lycra is basically plastic. It's what we use in our leggings. Our jeans sometimes have that stretch. It's good because it keeps your pants in shape, but it's bad if you want to put it in the air, in the landfills is what kind of creates microplastics and all that stuff.
So I know Lycra, for example, so it's got the stretch though and things like that. So what's the challenges of making something, not only that's biodegradable, but also, something that consumers want to buy that's, cost effective, that, has a decent, that holds together and lasts well enough as well. Like, how difficult is it to incorporate those aspects into your research and into the future manufacturing of these clothes?
It's very difficult. That's why, we're 4 years in and still doing some research. There has been really cool yarn developing for replacing the Lycra. So plant-based nylons, plant-based Lycra. But again, it's all about testing it and see the longevity and how are they comparable to what we use as Lycra and their performance. So, I think we're moving forward. There's a lot of innovation, and I think this is where with the government, when they support innovation grants, this is where the money goes, because it's looking at the future and how can we actually create a better product for Mother Earth, basically. So, this is what drives me to continue to run this company is all the possibility of the future and how can we do a better job in reducing waste in the fashion industry, which we know creates a lot of pollution. So
right, because I even know bamboo, for example. You're saying that's the fabric that you're kind of looking into as a contender, but it's also been criticized for being chemical intensive to produce as well. So how much are you taking that into account?
And that's the thing. It comes down to, you can have a really good product or a material like bamboo that grows without pesticide, but then you have to think of the production of it. How is it made? How is the fabric made from this bamboo? And then, so that's another part that you have to look into. And then you look at the tencel. Tencel is from birch trees, eucalyptus, and it takes longer to grow. But at least, Tencel has a closed loop system. So you can't never be 100% sustainable. There's always going to be a pro and a con. But, this is where the research goes, is as you really want to make sure that whatever decision you make is a step forward and creating better, like creating good versus a step back. So, yeah.
So how far are we away from, buying a T-shirt that we can throw into our compost bins eventually when it's all tattered and raggy?
Oh, I don't know, maybe a few more years. I think that the most eco fabric or most eco product that you have in your wardrobe right now is what you have. So I always say today and tomorrow and for the next week and years to come, like, keep wearing your clothes the longest that you wear your clothes, the better we have less piles in the landfill.
Andrea, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
That's Andrea Dandino speaking with CEO, and she's the CEO and head designer at Anne Muller, speaking there with Corey. You recognize Corey Funk's voice, of course. They spoke earlier this week about what she's trying to do with sustainable fabrics in her company here locally. If you have some thoughts on local designers that you love, 788-3205. Always like to feature local. 7:22 a.m. is the time, and just before sports, let's have a bit of music. This is a group out of Toronto. They are called Weather Station, and the tune's called Neon Signs.
I've gotten used to feeling like I'm crazy or just lazy. Why can't I get off this floor, think straight anymore? Out on the street, we're walking in punishing heat. Nobody meets my eyes except woody sides and luxury designs. Every neon sign, every flashing light tries to fool you, get you on their side. Everybody swears they need you, and only you to make the buy. You feel flattered to be wanted, and you don't know why. It reminds me of that look in your eyes.
Toronto. This is Weather Station and Neon Signs. If you want to check it out, support Canadian artists, get it on your playlist. You're listening to 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Let's turn our attention to morning sports. Scott Reguer joins us now. Hello.
Good morning, Marcy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, yeah. It's got an 80s vibe, that tune. I keep trying to think of it. Right?
Yeah, it does. Now that's going to bug me because it harkens of someone. Yeah,
Is it Chrissy Hind? I can't figure out if it's Anyway,
we'll think it through.
I know it's bugging me too. Let's talk sports. Fresh off their big win in Edmonton, the Jets have their home opener tonight.
Yeah, and it's against a pretty compelling opponent in this sense. Chicago has Connor Bedard in their lineup, the rookie of the year last year, even though he didn't play much of the season because of injury. He is the wunderkind in the league at the moment. So 7 o'clock puck drop, Jets hosting Bedard and Chicago. Connor Hellebuck, I'm sure, will be back in net after he shut out the Oilers in Edmonton the last time out. And with respect to goaltending, some news with the Jets. Kaapo Kähkönen placed on waivers yesterday, which means Eric Comrie will, for now at least, serve as Connor Hellebuck's backup. Comrie's a Winnipeg draft pick. He last served as Hellebuck's backup in 2021 before he left to join the Sabres. So as far as the home schedule, it all gets underway tonight. And let's hope for better crowds at the arena, because at 13,500 on average, the Jets were second last in the league, and the team that was last is no longer in the league, the Arizona Coyotes. So hopefully lots of fan support this season.
Ow, I don't like that positioning.
Well, it's the truth.
Well, they're going to be they'll be competing tonight. If you if you're supporters of local football, you might be going to the game tonight, right? So the Bombers have a chance to do something tonight at home that few would have thought possible given how this season began.
Yeah, it's been a remarkable campaign for the Bombers. They can clinch the West tonight for a fourth straight year. They started, remember, 2-6 and looked like they'd be in tough to even make the playoffs, let alone host the Western Final. However, since the loss to the Argos back at the end of July, they have not lost a single game since, and now have a chance to sew things up in the West with a win or draw tonight at home. Head coach Mike O'Shea was asked if the magnitude of the situation adds any extra motivation for players.
I don't think it really changes anything in terms of the preparation. I don't think it would change anything in terms of the psyche, like the players' ability to bring more for this game compared to others. I don't know that it does that either. Obviously, the players are aware. How would they not be? But it's not anything we've talked about. Everybody understands.
There you are. That is the coach, Mike O'Shea, as they get ready to host Toronto tonight and hopefully salt away another Western Final berth.
And what do we got? Increasing cloud tonight, low of 3 degrees. It's good football weather, in my humble opinion. You got to bring one of those. Remember those old cushions you put under your butt in the 80s because the stands were like metal? Yeah.
I still have them in my basement. Are you kidding?
I love that. little thermos of hot chocolate.
Oh, yeah. Old school.
Yeah.
And the hot chocolate cups, you could pull out, they were paper.
Yeah.
And you pull them out with those dodgy little holders. And then if they got soaked through, it would fall off and into your anyway.
Classic,
yeah.
To basketball, finally, where things did not go New York's way last night in the opening game of the WNBA final.
No, although they sure looked like they would, with New York leading Minnesota by 15 points with just 5 minutes to play, Marcy. Cue a massive comeback by the Lynx, which culminated with Nafisa Collier hitting the winning jump shot with 8 seconds left in overtime. The biggest turnaround in WNBA Finals history, and left director Spike Lee and actor Jason Sudeikis looking kind of forlorn in their front row seats in New York. So the Liberty, they're seeking a first ever championship and fall behind to the Lynx. Minnesota is vying for a record 5th WNBA title. Lovers in a Dangerous Time by Bruce Cockburn. Little bit of that in that tune I was listening to.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, or Bare Naked Ladies version of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was a synth and a flute, so I got confused at the end. I wasn't sure.
Okay. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes, you as well. You making a turkey for the boys or what?
Turkey rolls. A little unorthodox. That was at my wife's behest. So, yeah, turkey rolls. We'll see how the fam likes them.
All right, take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Still ahead on CBC's Information Radio, giving Indigenous content a boost on social media. We'll get details on a TikTok accelerator program for Indigenous creators that's now in its 4th year. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 8 degrees. You're going to notice it's a lot cooler today, but bright. Lots of sunshine. A high this afternoon of 15. The investigation of a patient who had knives in a St. Boniface Hospital medical ward last weekend has prompted calls for increased safety measures. Dr. Noam Cates at St. Boniface Hospital says staff are anxious. Last Saturday, the Winnipeg Police Tactical Unit rushed to the hospital. A hospital memo says a patient with knives had been acting erratically. Cates wants the hospital to take additional steps to prevent these types of incidents.
When you hear about something like this happening, of course you feel for the people involved, but you certainly, I think, also have a little bit of fear that that's something that could impact you directly as well.
The Manitoba Nurses Union says weapons are a growing concern at healthcare facilities right across the province. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says 16 institutional safety officers have been hired and trained to work at St. Boniface Hospital. The latest violent incident on a Winnipeg transit bus is stoking fears among some regular riders. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Police say they were stabbed and robbed by 3 young women. Lloyd Hawes is a regular transit user. He describes himself as semi-retired. Hawes says he hasn't seen any improvement since 21 transit safety officers were hired earlier this year.
There's practically no security after dark. And people, especially seniors, they don't want to go out after dark because they're afraid that somebody's going to follow them when they get off the bus and rob them or assault them.
The victims of Monday's attack were treated and released from hospital. Police are still looking for the 3 suspects. Manitoba's highest court has overturned the conviction of a man who was found guilty of killing a Winnipeg woman when he was 16. The Provincial Court of Appeal said in its decision the judge failed to correctly instruct the jury, prejudicing the man's right to a fair trial, and ordered a new trial. Lise Dene was found with brutal injuries in her Southdale home in March of 2019. The 51-year-old was rushed to hospital but died shortly after. A jury found the teen, who was known to Dene, guilty of second-degree murder. He was given the maximum 7-year sentence for youths. Because he was a youth at the time, the man cannot be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. CBC News is not revealing some details in the case as they could identify him. You can read more on this decision on our website this morning. Manitoba's opposition PCs say lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer is great news, but more needs to be done. The province plans to lower the minimum age for self-referral screenings to 40 by the end of 2026. It comes weeks after the government said it would lower the age to 45 by the end of 2025. The Tories have pushed for the age to be lowered from 50 to 40. PC health critic Kathleen Cook introduced a private member's bill earlier this month calling for a hard deadline of December 2026.
It requires Manitoba to lower the age for breast cancer screening to 40 by the end of 2026. And it adds a layer of transparency and accountability by requiring the minister to report annually on the number of screening mammograms done, because what gets measured gets managed.
Cook says she's glad the NDP has at least committed to lowering the age to 40. Now to Ottawa, where the Trudeau government's pharmacare bill was formally passed into law overnight. Here's Health Minister Mark Holland.
There's going to be a day when Canadians look back and find it unimaginable that people who needed access to essential medication didn't have it. We're not there yet, but today is an absolutely essential step in that journey.
The program initially will focus on providing free diabetes and birth control medications, but first, the federal government has to draft individual distribution agreements with the provinces and territories. The pharmacare initiative comes out of the now defunct Supply and Confidence Agreement between the Liberals and New Democrats. You can hear more on this story as well as more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Refugees from North Korea are sharing stories of hardship and survival with Winnipeggers this week. At the University of Manitoba yesterday, 3 refugees recounted the challenges they faced while living in North Korea. Myung-hee Kim tried to escape 3 times before finally settling in South Korea 10 years ago. She is a PhD student now in Seoul and is learning English.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has the Norwegian.
There's going to be a day when Canadians.
The Norwegian.
And I do apologize for that. For some reason, we can't access that. Here it is now. This is Myung-hee Kim speaking at the University of Manitoba yesterday.
In North Korea, I couldn't have a dream, and I couldn't do anything. And then I couldn't do watching movies and listen to music. Even I couldn't own the jeans, put on jeans.
Now, this event was organized by Freedom Speakers International to raise awareness about the challenges faced by North Korean refugees. The group also aims to build a path towards immigration for North Korean refugees to Canada. You can find more news updated throughout the day and no glitches with the audio. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
That Nobel Prize clip was audio bombing you there for a while.
I know. I couldn't get rid of it, which is great. That's another great story about survivors of the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forming a group and winning this year's Nobel Peace Prize.
We will hear more about it on World Report. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, locally in our news center this morning. 7:36 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. Well, let's get into the regional forecast. Abby Adeyemi is here to tell us what the long weekend's going to be like.
We will definitely see sunny conditions to start, but there's a trace of rain here and there in most of the regions tomorrow afternoon. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at 8 degrees. We're seeing clear skies out there. It's going to be sunny today. We're going to head to a high of 15. The clouds will roll in tonight, and then we deep to 3 degrees. A shower's likely tomorrow afternoon. Brandon at 1. It will be sunny today. You do warm up to a high of 16. Let's go to Thompson, where it is clear at -1, though cloudy at this time at -1. We will see a mix of sun and clouds later, and then that would clear by noon period. For folks in Thompson, you'll be warming up to 10 degrees. Churchill is at 2 degrees and cloudy at this time. You should see these cloudy skies with you with some breezy northwest winds, and then you warm up to 5. Dauphin is at 2 degrees and clear. Some sunny conditions in the forecast. For folks in Dauphin, you'll be warming up to 14 today. Gimli at 4. Currently clear out there. The Interlake region will see sunny conditions, highs of 14. Steinbach is at 5 and clear. We also have sunny weather in the forecast. You warm up to a high of 15. Morris is at 7 and clear. We'll see a high of 15 also today. Overall, it's going to be a sunny condition across the province. We do see light winds and a high of 15, which means we're just saying goodbye to the sunny weather. Yes, you see Corey there.
Did Corey just come in to get the traffic phone and hide under the desk?
He was like, duck.
Why is he hiding under the... What? Now he's coming in the studio. What's
the temperature like down there?
Duck under the desk.
Well, it's quieter down there. I get nervous. I don't want to get in front of Abby's way when there's a phone call. So,
Aww,
yeah,
teamwork.
Yeah.
Trying to muffle the audio while you're on the phone line.
Exactly. I'm considerate.
I just saw you, and then we just saw you disappear. What did the caller say? Was it traffic?
It actually was. It was just security let us know that our next guest is here,
great.
7:50.
Okay,
so
super.
lots of people coming in studio today. So it's great.
We do have something to report in traffic, though, right?
Yes, it's just a reminder to folks that today should be the last day of some water work going on Cumberland Avenue. All the eastbound lanes this week on Cumberland Avenue between Hargrave and Donald have been closed for water work. Should be done today. It means might be still going on today, but will be done after today. So that's a friendly reminder to folks. But if you see anything else going on right now out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, you want to give me a call, tell me what you're seeing out there. 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, up next on the show, Indigenous content on TikTok is getting a bigger boost. Like this TikTok featuring Winnipegger Sherry McKay as she talks about her grandma while putting on makeup.
Today's look is going to be a celebration of my late grandmother and her iconic red lipstick and like bluish green eyeshadow. I learned a lot from my grandmother. I learned how to be fearless. All these things I remember my grandmother doing. Sometimes when I look at myself, I can see a reflection of my grandmother. When I'm on stage and I perform and I travel to different Indigenous communities, I like to look my best and I like to feel my best. But I am by no means a professional makeup artist. I was just a young girl who watched her grandma put on makeup.
The sound of a video posted on Winnipegger Sherry McKay's TikTok page. And if you're on our YouTube page this morning, you could see the blue eyeshadow with her awesome hot pink hair. The Ojibwe Anishinaabe content creator has more than 600,000 followers. She's going to soon help other content creators find their voices on TikTok. Sherry's a program advisor for the National Screen Institute's TikTok Accelerator for Indigenous Creators. It is now in its 4th year. It is a free online program, and the capacity's grown now as well. So it used to be 40 people, and now they can take 300, which is super exciting. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning.
I love this TikTok about your grandma.
I know, right? I wasn't expecting that. I'm sitting here all emotional.
Are you? Because you're watching yourself do it and talk about your grandma?
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to be a little bit vulnerable, but especially on social media. But, I love sharing those things with people because I know other people can really relate to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of reaction did you get to that in terms of people relating to it?
Lots of people had this similar experience where they're talking about, experiences with their grandparents or someone, who had passed in their life. So, I like to share stuff like that.
This kind of actually gets us right into some of what you do to develop young, TikTok creators and content creators. Vulnerability can be part of it, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge part of it. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what you're sharing once you put it out there. You're opening up yourself to criticism and opinions and things like that. And sometimes it can be rough on your mental health and your well-being, and especially if you're not anticipating, because you don't get to dictate where your content goes. You don't know who's watching it and what they're going to say.
Is that part of it as well, like the encouragement to be vulnerable because of the what comes back can be really wonderful, but also helping young creators realize that, once you put something out there, that you kind of almost do have to also develop a little bit of understanding of what that world is. You know what I mean? You have to have a bit of a thick skin.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not only that, but sometimes, when people are feeling a certain way, you have to kind of sit with those emotions for a little bit before you run to create some content, because we all have a digital footprint as well. And, some things don't age well out there. So, and it's out there forever. So we talk about a lot of those things.
Yeah. Now, you're back as an advisor. Why is it important to be part of this program? Why do you believe in it?
First and foremost, I really wanted to kind of put my, experience and perspective as an Indigenous content creator out there, because it is different. It really is, especially when we're sharing things that are, that are really important to us. Not even just storytelling, but a lot of culture and a lot of things that our grandparents couldn't share, a lot of things that were hidden and that we only talked about in our families. So I feel that I kind of just needed to be this little voice that, had to remind these big folks and these big industries that, are not only does our voice matter, but it is a unique perspective.
What advice would you have wished someone gave you when you were first starting out that you've been able to pass on?
To not take things so seriously. When you start creating content, you can get obsessed with the numbers and the followers and likes and shares and stuff like that, because it means that, what you're putting out there, people are responding to, but also the negativity, because that can really take a toll on someone, and not internalizing the things that other people say about you or their opinions. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion, but, we don't need to carry it with us all day, every day. So it's really important to take care of your mental health and kind of just remind yourself that, a lot of times what other people think about you, especially if it's negative, that it's more about them, and sometimes it's projection and, all those things. So I really had to sit with that, because it's hard not to internalize those things.
How will you and the rest of the team work specifically with participants to help them create help them with their content and make sure it kind of meets the mark?
So there's actually a lot of things, and over the years, it's evolved like so much. So I think there's like best practices, just the certain ways that you can push out your content, trying to hone in on your niche, and again, the mental health aspect. And then there's the technical stuff where they bring in like leading experts in TikTok and amazing content creators, and even our alumni to come and just talk to the new participants about what it means to be a content creator on the application.
That's amazing. So there's all that support is involved if you go through this. Do you see TikTok as sort of, is it, because there's various ways people use it, right? It can be branding, it can be storytelling, it can be filmmaking. Is part of this to teach people the different ways that it can connect depending on what you want it to do for you?
I think it's more of like a vessel to help people figure out those things for themselves, because like, I'll be honest, my content can be all over the place, and I like to focus on comedy first and foremost, but sometimes things pop up where I'm like, this needs a little bit extra focus or extra attention. And so not necessarily like tightening things up for them, but just showing them all of the additional skills, because the interface in the app even is constantly evolving and changing. So there's that technical side, but there's also the community part, which you can't really duplicate. Like the TikTok community, once you get involved and you start talking TikTok to each other, it's like a different language. So that's really neat when it comes to kind of meeting your people.
It's amazing that the capacity's grown from 40 to 300 since this started 4 years ago. Why do you think the popularity and demand is there?
Oh my gosh. I know when I first heard, I was like, 300.
Yeah.
But I think last year, we had a lot of applicants, and it pained everybody to go through them and, have to like tell, a smaller amount, yes, and then a larger amount, like, sorry, you didn't get in. And so I think that was a huge part of it, is seeing the demand and how many people were interested, and then having to turn away so many people. So they were like, okay, this year we're going to do 300. And I was like, okay, let's do this.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah.
You're going to be busy. So obviously we'll ask you how people can apply. But if people do get into the program, how long is it and what should they expect from it?
So it is a 6 week online part-time program, and it's free. And how they can apply is go to the National Screen Institute website and look for the Accelerator program, because they do have a bunch of other great programs, but it's the Accelerator for Indigenous Creators program. And then there's a synopsis of, what you can expect and requirements. And then there's the link for the application. So basically you have to reside in Canada, be 18 years or older, be an Indigenous creator, First Nation, Inuit, or Métis, and have a public and personal TikTok account, and make sure that that you have to post within the last 30 days and have a good standing account with TikTok.
Got it. So it doesn't matter if you've got 1 million followers or 2. If you're on there, you're on there.
Yeah,
you can get some help.
Yeah, make your account today and post something and go apply.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Sherry. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I got to ask you this before you go.
Sure.
What does your family think of your makeup TikTok? What about your grandma?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how many people seen it, but I know that it definitely puts a lump in their throat, like just me earlier. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Isn't that funny how we connect to those things? My mom used to wear this perfume called Charlie in the 80s.
Oh my gosh.
Seriously. And I still, that when I smell it, when I catch a waft of it, I have this image of my mother in like 1982. So for you, it was the makeup. For me,
it was the blue eyeshadow and the red lipstick.
Yeah. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Sherry McKay, she's program advisor for the National Screen Institute's TikTok Accelerator for Indigenous Creators. It's on its 4th year now. They're going to open it up. They're taking 300 applicants, 300 people to participate, rather. So the deadline to apply is October 18th. And as Sherry said, please go to the National Screen Institute's website to apply.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Time right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock. Still ahead, we have our monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew. He's going to be in studio with us after 8 o'clock, so stay tuned. We have a number of things to discuss with him today. We'll also be asking him about something that is just making news this morning, which is the federal pharmacare program, and they're negotiating with different provinces now that that's moving forward, so we'll ask where we're at with that relationship between Manitoba and the feds and pharmacare. Next, though, for a number of nonprofits in the city, it has not been an easy year. One animal rescue in Winnipeg, Tales of Freedom, recently made the tough decision to say no to taking in more animals. Chelsea Hayden's the director and adoptions coordinator. She says part of the reason why is they just couldn't get enough funding. Hayden wasn't up to speed earlier this week.
As a not-for-profit rescue, we solely rely on the donations and the help from our volunteers. So those have been a lot lower recently, but of course, with how our economy is right now and trying to make ends meet day to day, that's very hard. So we're not surprised that the donations have gone down, but even if the donations do go down, it doesn't change the fact that our bills do not go down.
Tales of Freedom Rescue is not alone. Over the course of the year, several nonprofits have had to change how they operate or even close because they couldn't get funding. Megan Tate is the Vice President of Community Impact at the Winnipeg Foundation. She believes many nonprofits are facing a complex set of challenges in 2024, and she's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how common is this sentiment? I saw you nodding when you were hearing the concerns there in the clip.
Yeah, it's something we're hearing from so many community nonprofit organizations. I think you had somebody else on the show earlier this week from Adult and Teen Challenge, also talking about the decrease in donations that they're seeing as an organization. He also cited, I think, some trends that we're seeing in community, just with the cost of everything going up. People have less discretionary income and less available to give to philanthropic organizations. I think he also cited something else, which there's just so many good causes in our community to give to. And so with a smaller share of donors, there's just more and more organizations who are seeking out those funds.
Have we been in a place like this before in Winnipeg? I mean, I know we started talking about this post-COVID, but I'm trying to think of whether or not it's ebbed and flowed in this way, because there's always some sort of competition for donation dollars, right?
Yeah, for sure there is. Many years ago, the Winnipeg Foundation put out a report called Stressed, Stretched, and Still Standing, that it is a fairly common issue for the nonprofit sector. I think what we're seeing in tandem with the drop in donations is just the incredible increase in costs that nonprofit organizations are facing. And so while there might be a drop in individual donations, we're not necessarily hearing about funding cuts, but we're hearing about funding that is static. It's not increasing despite the increase in costs that community organizations are facing, everything from their rent to the food that they provide to their programs. And a big one is staffing. So over the last few weeks, Manitoba raised their minimum wage. That's so important for our community. Nonprofit leaders would be the first to say they really want to be able to provide a living wage to their staff. But as those costs go up and their funding doesn't go up in tandem, they're facing a real crunch.
When you think even to 5 years ago to now, how have things changed in the sector? Because there's I guess organizations that are doing things as well, under the umbrella of what they offer to communities and clients, that I understand that's even changed.
It's just, I feel like since COVID, everything's just gotten a little bit more complex. And so, an example that really resonates with me, about a year ago, an executive director of a women's resource center reached out to us. They were facing something that they were never seeing before, in that their staff were having to administer life-saving naloxone to people who were experiencing a drug overdose or drug poisoning. As you can imagine, that's traumatic for the person who's receiving that life-saving care, but it's also traumatic for the staff who that's not in their job description to do. And so in that case, the Winnipeg Foundation partnered with United Way to provide a little bit of funding to those frontline organizations. So they had to do kind of practical things like put some mechanisms on their bathrooms to watch if somebody was in there for too long, but also things to look after the care and the wellness of their staff who are just having to deal with these complex things that they hadn't had to deal with in the past.
Where is the way forward for this? What has to happen for things to get better? Is it at the more level of funding from governments, more donations from the public? I mean, as you said, it's a pretty complex issue.
I'd say all of the above, and it's not to point fingers. Government too is facing increased demand for their service, more complex needs that they're trying to address within those funding constraints, as are individual donors. So I think it's not one solution. It's everybody coming together. I was really inspired earlier this week. Winnipeg hosted a business and housing summit, and so the business community is thinking, how can we come together and tackle this really critical issue in our community? And so I think I'm inspired by, individual donors, business leaders, government, all coming together, and also the nonprofit organizations themselves, right? They each have their area of expertise and specialty, and as things become more complex, I'm seeing them coming around tables, bringing their unique expertise to the table and talking about how can we solve this together.
Is the Winnipeg Foundation itself, how stressed are you guys?
So we're just a different model because we are able to make grants due to the legacy of 100 years of donors who've made endowment gifts to the foundation. We're able to weather that storm a little bit better. And so I think that's one of the advantages of the model, is that through COVID and through these ups and downs that communities facing, that there's a certain amount of stability in terms of the grant dollars we're able to offer to community. And thanks to the generosity of our donors, our grant capacity is growing. And so we're doing everything we can to support these community organizations.
People must be exhausted.
Yeah, that's honestly probably one of the things that keeps me up at night the most, is just thinking about the wellness of nonprofit workers. I think there's this idea that people come to this work because of an altruistic nature, and that's true. Of course, they do this work because they care, but they're also professionals, right? Doing really critical work in our community, and so much is being asked of our nonprofit organizations, their staff, their leaders, their volunteers, that I am concerned about their wellness, the potential for burnout, and I think that really accelerated during the pandemic as well, just everything that was being asked of our nonprofit community partners.
Wondering, listeners, if this is resonating with you, especially if you work with a nonprofit. We'd love to hear what you think the healthy way forward might be. 788-3205. Megan, thank you for coming in this morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Megan Tate is the Vice President of Community Impact at the Winnipeg Foundation, highlighting some of the current concerns that nonprofits are having around our city. So as I mentioned, if you want to weigh into the conversation, 788-3205 is the listener line. Heather Wells is here now with our news department headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, the latest violent incident on Winnipeg Transit is stoking fears among some regular bus riders. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Lloyd Hawes is a regular transit user. He says he hasn't seen any improvement since 21 transit safety officers were hired earlier this year. For the first time since January, Canada's unemployment rate is on the decline. Stats Canada is just out a few moments ago with the latest labor figures showing 47,000 jobs were added to the economy last month. That drops unemployment nationally down to 6.5%. We'll hear more coming up on World Report and more on your Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. Let's get into what's going on in our weather here. Clear and 8 degrees. Our high today, 15. And we're going to have sunshine throughout the day. If you want to call us in traffic, 788-3093 is where you can reach us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. So coming up on Information Radio, Premier Wab Kinew is in studio for our monthly interview. We're going to ask him more about Lac du Bonnet and the care home that's long been promised there. Will shovels get on the ground by the end of the year? CBC was focusing on Lac du Bonnet and doing a live show there yesterday, so we'll ask the Premier about that. Also, the latest on pharmacare, where is Manitoba at in that agreement? And some follows on some stories we had on earlier this week as well that we'll ask the Premier about. So Wab Kinew live in our CBC studio after 8 o'clock. Stay with us. World Report's coming up next on 89.3.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
A rare conversation with one of the greatest actors of our time, Cate Blanchett. She'll talk about how, after years of putting on accents for the likes of Queen Elizabeth and Katharine Hepburn and Bob Dylan, her dreams are now all about remembering her real voice.
but I don't know what my voice is anymore.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It is a common refrain. There's too much bad news and hope is hard to find. But the magazine Reasons to be Cheerful, launched by David Byrne, is now 5 years into finding the positive. We'll talk about reasons to be hopeful and cheerful coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. A Canadian pharmacare bill is officially law after passing the Senate and receiving royal assent. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says this is great news for many Canadians.
Free insulin is coming for every Canadian who needs it, ensuring that they don't have to choose between putting food on the table and getting the life-saving medication they require. And it means we'll be providing prescription contraceptives for free, because we not only believe in a woman's right to choose, but we act on it.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who pushed for the bill, says it will take power away from Big Pharma. David Thurton joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. David, how long will it be before Canadians can access these free drugs?
Yeah, that's a question, John, we still don't yet know the answer to, but it seems like we are a step closer. Health Minister Mark Holland today says he is continuing negotiations with provinces and territories because, of course, healthcare in this country is delivered by those governments. Holland says he is optimistic he can get this done soon. The minister said in the next few weeks there will be agreements reached with every province and territory. But we do know not everyone is on board. Both Alberta and Quebec have been reluctant to sign on. Nevertheless, Holland is confident they can all find common ground.
We need to agree that every Canadian deserves essential medicine and that it's not something that we should accept as a society any longer, and we need to move towards fixing that. Now, the right conversation is how.
So, David, this bill was a key demand of the NDP, and now that it has passed and their deal with the Liberals has been torn up, are they likely to join the Conservatives' push for an election?
Holland says he's been having productive conversations with the New Democrats, and both parties are focused on delivering for Canadians. The reality, though, is that the NDP has said its deal with the Liberals is done. It's done. No negotiations are happening with this government to keep them in power, Singh has said, and so an election is even more likely. But the reality is as well, just because pharmacare is law doesn't mean Canadians will have access to free medications. In fact, if there is a Conservative government and no deals are signed with provinces and territories, there's no guarantee the NDP's dream of free medications will become a reality. So certainly, John, that is a calculus the NDP will have to weigh.
Watch this space. David Thurton joining us from our Parliamentary Bureau in Ottawa. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
The September Labour Report is out from Statistics Canada. It shows tens of thousands of jobs were added to the economy, dropping the unemployment rate for the first time since January. For more on what the numbers mean, here's our senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong.
It has been a topsy-turvy year for the Canadian labour market. The trend has largely been adding jobs, but not enough to keep up with population growth. Now, this month, Canadian employers added 47,000 jobs, and that rate of unemployment fell 0.1%. The new rate now sits at 6.5%. But total hours worked, that was down. Wages are still growing, but the pace has decelerated once again. They're now rising 4.6% on a year-over-year basis. So what these numbers tell us will certainly be debated by policymakers across the country, but there's probably not enough here to shift the broader narrative about the state of the Canadian economy. And that is, largely speaking, that the economy is still struggling to find its footing once again, and that people still think it needs rate cuts from the Bank of Canada to give things something of a boost heading into this winter and into next spring. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
This year's Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to a Japanese organization. Nihon Hidankyo is made up of survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The committee is honoring the group for its activism against nuclear weapons. Jürgen Vottner-Friednes heads the Nobel Committee.
In awarding this year's Nobel Peace Prize to Nihon Hidankyo, the Norwegian Nobel Committee wishes to honor all survivors who, despite physical suffering, and painful memories have chosen to use their costly experience to cultivate hope and engagement for peace.
In Hiroshima, news of the award was met with disbelief. 81-year-old Toshiyuki Mimaki leads Nihon Hidankyo. Through tears, he says it can't be real. He goes on to say, "We will appeal to the world as we always have done for the abolition of nuclear weapons and the achievement of an everlasting peace." Florida residents are repairing the damage caused by Hurricane Milton and cleaning up debris. The storm smashed through coastal communities, tore homes to pieces, flooded streets, and spawned a barrage of deadly tornadoes. At least 8 people are dead, but many are relieved that Milton wasn't worse. The CBC's Aaron Collins is covering the storm for us. He's in Fort Pierce, Florida. Aaron, what are you seeing?
Well, John, I'm seeing a lot of water. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm walking through an intersection. We're here in Fort Pierce in St. Lucie County. It's a community along the Atlantic coast of Florida, right? So just to situate you a little bit, we're about 2 or 3 hours north of Miami on the other side of the state from where Milton made landfall. So a long way away, and the damage here really caused by water and flooding, and you can still see at this intersection here, well, it's very, very flooded. Our vehicle's actually stuck in some mud here. That's how much water folks here are still dealing with. So the flooding, as well as a lack of power and a lack of drinking water, really helping or making it hard for a lot of Floridians to get back to their homes, and of course creating issues for people still operating those search and rescue missions that we're hearing so much about in this part of Florida.
Also getting reports of tornadoes touching down. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, this is the part of the state right here in St. Lucie County where several tornadoes touched down. We had reports of over 120 warnings of tornadoes as Milton moved through this part of the state. That's a record for this state. And in addition to that, several touched down. We went to a community just north of here, about 20 or 30 minutes from here yesterday, John. The tornado whipped through there. It was a seniors plus 55 living community. At least 5 Floridians lost their life in that area. We know 12 people have died because of Hurricane Milton, most of them actually on this side of the state, so hundreds of kilometers away from where the hurricane made landfall, and much of the destruction and many of those deaths being attributed to those tornadoes touching down.
CBC's Aaron Collins in Fort Pierce, Florida. Thanks, Aaron.
You bet.
A woman accused of carrying out a strange string of murders across southern Ontario is scheduled to appear in court this morning. Sabrina Kaldar is charged in connection with 3 separate killings last week, including 2 believed to be at random. The CBC's Thomas Daigle has been digging into her past and brings us this report.
It's hard to find acquaintances who will speak openly about Sabrina Kaldar, now that she's facing 3 murder charges in what police consider a 3-day rampage. Her former neighbor was stunned to hear the news.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually. That's insane to hear.
The daughter of 2 dentists, Kaldar's behavior grew violent as an adult. Court records obtained by CBC News show she was previously convicted of break-and-enter and assault with a weapon. Then last week, police allege she killed a woman she knew in Toronto before traveling on public transit to murder 2 men at random in Hamilton and Niagara Falls. Hamilton Police Staff Sergeant Jason Cattle says all attacks were unprovoked.
We are at this point comfortable to release that all 3 victims were stabbed.
In court, a lawyer for the 30-year-old accused questioned whether she's fit to stand trial. Kaldar's been ordered to appear in mental health court, and she remains in custody for now. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Hamilton.
And finally, a harrowing few hours for 12 tourists trapped 300 meters underground in a Colorado mine that had been turned into a tourist attraction came to an end last night. They got stuck down below after an elevator broke down, but crews were eventually able to rescue them 6 hours later. Teller County Sheriff Jason Meixel.
They all came up very safely, 4 at a time, so we could get them through the surface. They're all in good spirits. We fed them pizza. That's what they wanted. So there's a good news story at the end of this.
A group of 11 were brought up earlier. One person did die, but authorities aren't saying who or how. They're investigating that along with the elevator failure. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, you can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
On the app and on YouTube. Wherever you're joining us, expect a nice day here. Clear in Winnipeg specifically. It's been 8 degrees. Abby's in the full forecast in just a moment. This half hour on the program, we have our monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew. So if you're just listening to the national news, you're hearing about how the pharmacare plan from the federal government is taking another step forward now. So what does that mean in terms of agreements with provinces? We'll find out where Manitoba is at with that relationship around pharmacare with Ottawa. Also, we're going to ask Premier Wab Kinew about Lac du Bonny. CBC was live in that community yesterday. Promises made there for many years from many governments over about their care home being built there. We're going to find out whether or not shovels are in fact going to get in the ground before the end of the year and more. So stay tuned. We have our monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew this half hour live on Information Radio. Also, weather, traffic, and the latest news and job numbers straight ahead as well. Heather Wells in our news center. So stay with us. And here she is now. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Well, we begin with St. Boniface Hospital, where a patient armed with knives in a medical ward last weekend has prompted calls for increased safety measures. Staff at St. Boniface Hospital, according to a doctor there, are now anxious. He says he wants more to be done to prevent violence at that facility. The Manitoba Nurses Union says weapons are a growing concern at healthcare facilities right across the province. And for the first time since January, Canada's unemployment rate is on the decline. Stats Can out this last hour with the latest labor figures showing 47,000 jobs were added to the national economy last month, dropping the unemployment rate down to 6.5%. We are still waiting to hear where Manitoba's unemployment rate landed. I'll have that for you coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
The Premier knows that. He's sitting right here. We should put your mic on.
Do tell.
Wab Kinew.
Yeah, it was 5,000 more full-time jobs in Manitoba, so the unemployment rate came down, I think, 0.1%. Yeah, good news for us.
There you go. More analysis coming through the day. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Premier. We will have our full interview in a moment here, of course. Unless you want to do the weather for Abby.
Too funny.
Abby, why don't you take it over here?
Okay, at this point, we're seeing the sun already make its appearance across the board. Most areas will be sunny today. We'll see temperatures ranging from 5 in Churchill to 16 in Brandon. Though it gets cooler tonight with some clouds rolling in, some areas will see slight rain come here and there. Right now, Winnipeg, 4 degrees at the airport, 8 at the Forks. It is becoming sunny as we can see. We will see sunny skies today, a light breeze this morning, and then we'll warm up to a high of 15. Warmer than our seasonal for this time of the year. It's usually around 11, 12, but we will be warming up to 15 today. And then some clouds will roll in later in the evening, and then we drop to 3 degrees. In other parts of the province, we're seeing the sun make its appearance in Thompson, and it's still cloudy in Churchill at -1 and 2 degrees respectively. And for the down south, we're seeing 6 in Morris, and we're seeing 2 in Dauphin. Right now, Winnipeg, we're at 8, heading to a high of 15.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
The commute, Corey, been quiet. We figure people are taking Friday off for the long weekend or what?
Yeah, but there is one thing to keep an eye out for right now. Police just actually issued an advisory here in Winnipeg. The Major Crimes Unit, there's a search warrant that they're executing on the 700 block of Flora Avenue in the North End. So they're just asking the public to avoid the area of Selkirk Avenue and Arlington Street and use different routes to get around that. So that's the one issue that's been out there so far this morning. But if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
So as you heard, Premier Wab Kinew is in studio now at 8:15 a.m. on your Friday morning with our regular monthly interview. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Thanks for having me.
So why don't we get started actually with the news of the day? People might have just heard on the national news that the federal bill for pharmacare bill is going through. They're looking at what provinces are going to be doing with agreements. So British Columbia has already signed a memorandum of understanding with the feds. Alberta has said they're withholding, getting involved in this. Where's Manitoba at? Just to reiterate, what our plans are moving forward with pharmacare.
Well, we're doing a lot in this area, so I can definitely share some information here. First off, here in this news this morning, it sounds like good news for Manitobans. I think we all want to see stronger healthcare, stronger pharmacare coverage. And so what I would say as a starting point is that as a provincial government, we're already moving in this direction. So many people listening today will probably know that on October 1st this month, birth control became free in Manitoba, and that's something that we did out of our own budgetary resources. We're moving ahead with that. So with the federal government now coming forward and passing this law, we can move more strongly in terms of seeing if there's additional federal resources to help bolster that plan, as well as some of the other drug coverage that you heard the Prime Minister and other federal leaders talking about. I'll give Jagmeet Singh some credit here because he was in our province several months ago saying, you know what? Start the negotiations now because this bill will pass and you can start the negotiations even before this thing comes law. So to your point about British Columbia already having a memorandum of understanding here, we've been negotiating with the feds on this already. So this bill becoming law or getting approval at the Senate, I think is an important milestone, but there's already a lot of legwork happening. We have some of the coverage out the door already. We're going to be looking at next steps. And if I could just share a quick piece of info about BC, what they were able to do, because in BC, like Manitoba, the province was already covering free birth control. They were able to use some federal resources to look at other forms of health coverage for women in particular. And so what BC did is they're now covering HRT, hormone replacement therapy, for women and for folks who are experiencing menopause to be able to get that additional level of support in the healthcare system. So that's not something that we can say that we're in a position to announce here. But as this federal coverage and federal resources come out the door for a province like ours, where we are very focused on healthcare, where we already have taken a step to make birth control free, that's why I say it's good news, because potentially this means there are additional ways that we can help more people in Manitoba.
So I'm hearing you say additional. I'm hearing you look at BC and say they funding their birth control and using the funds that are coming not to take over that funding, but to add additional resources.
Well, I think both, right? They're using that to support the birth control initiative, and then they're also using that to maybe branch out into some additional areas.
So it's not like you'll have a Manitoba pharmacare program plus a federal program. This will all eventually the birth control.
You're the patient. You show up at the doctor's office. You take your script to the pharmacy. It should be all one seamless experience, basically.
Do we know if the funds that you're funding the birth control initiative with now then will go back into the provincial pocket, because the funds from the federal government will take over that portion of what you're offering?
Well, it's too soon to say because we don't have that deal finalized. But what I am suggesting is potentially, instead of just saying everything nets out or everything just kind of like is even in the wash, so to speak, that there might be a way where we can be creative, working alongside the federal government to say, all right, birth control is covered. Are there additional coverage, additional forms of coverage for other forms of women's health, other forms of reproductive freedom we would be able to now extend? So those are where the negotiations and conversations are at now.
Just as a last question on this, is there to be clear, Manitoba does not yet have a formal memorandum of understanding with the feds as BC does?
Well, I'm sure we will do a big fancy announcement when we have all the paperwork done, so to speak.
It's coming.
Correct.
Let's go to another story. Lac du Bonnet, we actually have a clip to play for you here, Premier, because we were there yesterday. CBC was on site. As you know, the town's been planning for a new personal care home for more than a decade. In March, you said there will be shovels in the ground this year. Gordon Peters yesterday has been trying to get this facility built for years, so we heard from him on the show. Here's how he described how some of the people in town are feeling.
They're a little skeptical because of the March announcement and nothing happening during the major building season. So there's some considerable skepticism after 30 years, which is understandable, but I know that there's a lot of excitement in the development of this.
Are you still confident, Premier, that construction will start before the end of December?
Yes, and the March announcement that he's referring to, and thank you, Gordon, for reminding folks and to hold myself and the rest of our team accountable. At that announcement, I said specifically shovels in the ground this year because I want to invite the accountability. And also for our team who's working really hard on this, if I say it publicly, it also puts a little bit more onus, a little bit more urgency behind, yes, we have to deliver for folks in Lac du Bonnet who've been waiting so long for this personal care home to get moving. So very intentionally, I said shovels in the ground this year because I want us to hit this target. I want us to be held accountable by the community. And so what I can say is this thing is not moving as quickly as I would like. However, we are going to get shovels in the ground this year by December 2024. December is my birthday month, and if I have to come in on my birthday on the last day of the year with a shovel myself, I will do so in order to move this project along.
That's an answer. Let's go to another clip, actually, we have, because we've been covering a lot of topics this week on the show.
Sure.
So one of the other ones was the Accessibility for Manitobans Act, speaking of things that have been long in the works and promised by multiple governments. This was supposed to set standards for people living both with physical and mental disabilities, as you know. It became law 6 years ago, yet the most basic things like having a washroom that works are still an issue. So this is just a small clip of Lindsay Cook. She's CEO of Manitoba Possible. We had her on the show earlier this week. Here's some of what she said.
You know, what I'm really pleased to see is that Manitoba adopted the National Building Code 2020 last year. So that came into effect January of this year. And the National Building Code 2020 edition actually includes quite a lot of provisions for accessible washrooms. The challenge with that is that that is for new builds and that's for significant renovations. There isn't other legislation planned under the AMA, which surprises some people. There will not be legislation that covers the built environment. There's advocacy efforts such as groups like Barrier Free Manitoba that are pushing to return to that built environment standard. But as it stands now, that will be designated to the building code, which will not have an impact on the vast majority of spaces currently inaccessible.
So what do you say that and the concern around the fact that there's not legislation planned for the built environment, which is, I mean, it's wonderful to say new builds are going to be accessible, but so much of where we live is going to be people that are just still continuing to face barriers.
No, and this one's really important to me because actually my predecessor as the MLA for Fort Rouge, Jennifer Howard, was the minister who brought this Accessibility for Manitobans Act into law here in this province. And she did a lot of work with the business community in particular to bring them on side and to help ensure that there was a bridge between the needs in the community, but also that sustainability for business, if you will. And so the way the AMA works is that the law is basically like an overarching umbrella. And then underneath that, there's 5 standards. And right now, 4 of those standards are implemented. And our Minister of Families has launched a consultation on one of the remaining standards that needs to be decided. But to get to the point of what Lindsay is talking about there, the built environment standard is one of those 5 standards. And this one was passed under the PC time in office. And we raised some of the same criticism, then opposition, as Lindsay is now, which is that the built environment exempted basically all existing buildings, which causes a concern for people in the disabilities community. There is a statutory review for this bill, so it will come up for renewal at some point. And then that will be the opportunity for us to work with the advocates in the community, the people with the lived experience, to be able to address some of these concerns. And I know, you know, CBC as a platform, you've done some excellent work in sharing some of these stories of people who are
Can't you just say now to like the business community, look, like this is the law, and put some pressure, or can you get the timeline to be more urgent to get these built environments better working for folks?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that we are working on that. Like with that consultation that's out in the community on one of the remaining standards under the AMA, we are out there working with folks with lived experience and advocates in the sector. We're also taking action in some really important areas. There was another announcement this week from our Minister of Families on supports for people living in the community with disabilities, and it had to do with an equity complaint called Sumner Pruden. Basically, there is a wonderful person living on a reserve in Manitoba. His name is Dewey, and his mom brought forward a complaint saying, you are discriminating to the provincial government against my child because you do not offer CLDS, Community Living Disability Services, and home care on reserve. And so our government this week announced that we're taking what I think is a very significant step to just level the playing field and allow our province to live up to that phrase, every child matters. which is to say that home care and community living disability services will no longer end at the boundary of a reserve in Manitoba. So now going forward and into the future, people in the community with disabilities, whether you live in the city of Winnipeg, whether you live in a rural community, whether you live on a First Nation, will be able to access the same quality of services in community so that you can live with dignity. To me, this is a very, very big change that will change things for generations to come. And of course, we're going to have to do a lot of work around staffing and service delivery improvements to be able to make good on it.
I was going to ask you about achievements you've made in the year since you've been in office. I want to switch gears now because
Okay.
I want to ask you to address some allegations that people in Fort Garry, I believe, deserve some answers to. They voted in Mark Wasilliu as an NDP. He's now an independent MLA after being ousted from your party, but he has made some serious allegations. Wasilliu has said that you, quote, lunged at him during a campaign event in the summer of 2019 and said, quote, I'm the leader, you do what I tell you to do, end quote. He alleges he was asked to, quote, lie for Wab, end quote. I know you have heard these allegations. The PCs have now called for the ethics commissioner to look into this as well. Is any of this true, yes or no?
No.
Any part of it?
No.
People who are listening might wonder if they should have concern about how you lead your team, toxicity at the ledge, or what all of this is about. Hearing this, how this has unfolded. What would you say to them?
Well, I'm focused on you. We were elected by Manitobans to fix healthcare and to make life more affordable. So what we've done with 1 year in office is that we've hired 873 new people on the front lines of our healthcare system. We've reopened emergency rooms that were previously closed under the last government. We cut the provincial fuel tax to save you money, and it slowed inflation in our province. And so political opponents like the PCs and others, they can keep talking about me. I'm going to keep talking about you. And we show up for work each and every day, humbled by the awe-inspiring task of trying to make Manitoba a better place, which is the mandate we were given by the people of this great province.
Appreciate you answering our question.
Of course.
You announced this week, 826, Premier Wab Kinew with us. These interviews always cover a number of topics. And you made an announcement this week on new machete legislation. How's that going to work?
Well, it's actually similar to what happens with bear spray in the province right now, which is that we're asking retailers, first of all, to check IDs and then to keep a record of sales. One thing that this does is obviously it restricts who can actually purchase a weapon like this, but then it also creates a paper trail. So that if there is an investigation for one of these terrible things that we keep hearing about in the community, that there'll be the ability for law enforcement to hold people accountable. And so I think we've been working very hard on public safety. I'll give credit to our Attorney General here, Matt Wiebe, who's been doing a lot of things over the course of the past year to make Manitoba a safer province. And this is us, again, listening to some of the concerns both from law enforcement but also from the community. People who are talking about, violence. But I want to also point out the following. While we're taking these, tough on crime steps, we're also tough on the causes of crime. And if we want to talk about how do we make Manitoba a safer province 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I think the most important thing that we've done this past year is starting a universal school food program in Manitoba. That is going to keep more kids in class. We've heard directly from inner city teachers already who are saying we have dozens of kids showing up who were not showing up last year. But also over the course of those children's lifetime, their educational achievements are going to grow. Their lifetime income is going to be higher. They are going to be healthier as a result. And most importantly, on the public safety conversation, when we're talking about that dynamic, then communities are going to be safer when we keep more kids on the positive path.
Just as a last brief question before you go this morning, I want to ask you if you know when you're going to make your decision about whether or not the province will permanently fund the police officers through the Retail Theft Initiative.
So I don't have a specific date to share for you right now, but I can tell you we're actively looking at it. This is something that has clearly been very well received by community and by business leaders and a lot of other folks out there. So I think the inflection point where we're at is trying to balance the new police officers who are graduating from the academy, if you will, the existing use of overtime, and just trying to get the balance of resources right. But listen, we've heard loud and clear that this thing is working and that it's well received. And so we're very, very seriously looking at how do we continue that success.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
That is Premier Wab Kinew. That's our regular monthly interview here on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning, everyone, wherever you're listening from. Clear, pretty good for the Bomber game if you're going tonight, a low of 3 degrees. It's kind of classic fall football weather. It's going to be quite a night as the Bombers have just been on a run of late. In traffic this morning, everything's been pretty good. We did have one major issue, and I'm just looking at Corey to see if that's cleared up. We'll have an update for you right after the news, but please give us a call, 788-3093, with any problems. As far as we know, we do still have that issue. So that is the Major Crimes Unit executing a search warrant in the 700 block of Flora Avenue. That means that the Winnipeg Police Service is requesting that you avoid the area of Selkirk and Arlington right now and use alternate routes. So right now, we do believe that still is at play. There's no risk of concern for public safety, by the way. It's just for traffic, avoid the area, please. 788-3093. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 8 degrees. Lots of sun right now. It's going to be with us all day. A little bit cooler than we've been lately. A high today of 15. The investigation of a patient who had knives at St. Boniface Hospital last weekend has prompted calls for increased safety measures. CBC's Edziu Lovren has the story.
Police are investigating after being called to respond to a man wielding knives at St. Boniface Hospital. The man was a patient on a medical ward and was said to be armed and acting erratically. ER Dr. Noam Cates says staff are filled with anxiety following the incident and wants the institution to do more to decrease violence at the hospital. Darlene Jackson is the president of the Manitoba Nurses Union. She says weapons are a growing issue at all healthcare facilities across Manitoba, and says the employer and province need to ensure all staff and patients are being kept safe. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says 16 institutional safety officers have been hired and trained to work at St. Boniface. Edziu Lovren, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some regular Winnipeg Transit users are worried about their safety after another violent incident. On Monday evening, a woman and her 16-year-old daughter were attacked on a city bus near Portage and Valor Road. Police say they were stabbed and robbed by 3 young women. Diana Euland is an educational assistant who takes the bus almost every day. She'd like to see the new transit security team do more patrols around bus shelters.
Knowing that I'm paying money to get on the bus, and my safety might still be compromised, that does raise a huge concern.
The victims of Monday's attack were treated and released from hospital. Police are still looking for the 3 suspects. Manitoba's highest court has overturned the conviction of a man who was found guilty of killing a Winnipeg woman when he was 16. The Provincial Court of Appeal said in its decision the judge failed to correctly instruct the jury, prejudicing the man's right to a fair trial and ordering now a new trial. Lise Dene was found with brutal injuries in her Southdale home in March of 2019. The 51-year-old was rushed to hospital but died shortly afterwards. A jury found the teen, who was known to Dene, guilty of second-degree murder in the death. That was in 2022. That verdict came down, and he was given the maximum 7-year sentence for youths. Because he was a youth at the time, the man cannot be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. CBC News is not revealing some details in the case as they could identify him. Well, Manitoba's unemployment rate, like Canada's, is on the decline. Statistics Canada is out this morning with the latest labour figures showing 47,000 jobs were added across the country to the economy last month. That drops the national unemployment rate down to 6.5%. In Manitoba, the rate also edged down to 5.7%. Across the country, women over 25 were among those seeing the biggest gains, and full-time employment among all segments of the population saw its largest increase in more than 2 years. Manitoba's opposition PCs say lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer is great news, but more needs to be done. The province plans to lower the minimum age for self-referral screenings to 40 by the end of 2026. It comes weeks after the government said it will lower the age to 45 by the end of 2025. The Tories have also pushed for the age to be lowered from 50 to 40. PC health critic Kathleen Cook introduced a private member's bill earlier this month.
It requires Manitoba to lower the age for breast cancer screening to 40 by the end of 2026. And it adds a layer of transparency and accountability by requiring the minister to report annually on the number of screening mammograms done, because what gets measured gets managed.
Cook says she is glad the NDP has at least committed to lowering the age to 40. A busy night for Winnipeg fire crews, responding to no fewer than 5 fires last night. The first, a single-story warehouse on Edwin near the Disraeli around 7 last night. Then around 8:30, a fire in the 100 block of Dearborn in Elmwood started in one house and then spread to the house next door. Just before midnight, crews went to a fire in a vacant home in the 600 block of Westminster. That house had been damaged by 2 previous fires. Around 1:30, there was a fire on Kincora Drive in Charleswood that spread from the attached garage to a 2-story home. And finally, around 2:40 this morning, a garage fire on Polson near McGregor. No one was hurt in any of the fires. 3 North Korean refugees are in Winnipeg this week, aiming to build a path towards immigration to Canada. Yesterday, they went to the University of Manitoba to share stories of hardship they faced in the isolated country. Casey Lartig chairs and is co-founder of Freedom Speakers International.
North Korean refugees are looking for countries where they can live free. And some of them still feel a bit endangered in South Korea. You know, there's a whole world with like 190 countries, and they would like to go and see some of those countries. And Canada is one of the countries that they heard good things about.
The refugees are going to have a meet and greet at the Forks Market at 1 o'clock this afternoon. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Aaron Broman and Megan Ketcherson in our news center this morning. Big thanks to our team at the Current Affairs unit, in the Current Affairs unit here at CBC Manitoba. The associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kickson, Kalkademu Legata, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Kuma, Jim Agapito, May McKillop, Carmen Ponto, Angelina Peltier, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, and Dylan Longhurst. Our community reporter in unit is Shanley Vidal. Hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai and Faith Fundal. A producer in unit, Wendy Parker. And this week, Donna Carrero and Raman Summerfield. Also hosting this week, we, I believe, had Bruce Layden on the weekend. And our YouTube producer is Kevin Nipatebo. Yay, Kevin. There he is, waving at you. Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer of Current Affairs overall in the unit. And Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. Corey, anything to add here?
Police advisory on the 700 block of Flora. They're asking to avoid Selkirk and Arlington Street area altogether.
And Abby.
Sunny and mild temperatures, and we're heading to a high of 16. Enjoy the Bomber games tonight.
Everybody have a wonderful long weekend. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, enjoy it. And enjoy friends and family and the meaning of the season. Take care.